Hello there, and welcome to Sleepumentary. Tonight I want you to picture something simple, something so ordinary we often forget it's even there. The ground beneath your feet. Solid, dependable, unmoving, or so we believe. But what if it isn't quite what we think? What if beneath that thin crust of soil and stone lies not just rock and fire, but vast mysteries we've barely begun to imagine? Consider this for a moment. Humanity has mapped distant galaxies with astonishing precision, traced the faint light of stars billions of years old, and rovers crawl across the dusty surface of Mars. Yet here on the very planet we call home, we have barely scratched the surface literally. The deepest humans have ever drilled is the Kola Super Deep borehole in Russia, reaching just over 7 miles into the Earth. 7 miles may sound impressive, but when you compare it to Earth's radius nearly 4,000 miles, it's like scratching the paint off a basketball and pretending we know what's inside. Think about that the next time you walk outside. Beneath the grass and concrete, the layers go down farther than we can truly comprehend. We've only touched the skin of our planet, and what lies beneath remains largely theoretical, a blend of scientific models, seismic echoes, and human imagination. Mainstream geology assures us the interior is solid layers, crust mantle, outer core of molten metal, and inner core of iron. Temperatures so hot they could melt steel, pressures so intense they crush rock into new forms. But even within those neat diagrams of textbooks, anomalies remain pockets of unexpected density heat patterns that don't quite align seismic waves that ripple in ways our equations can't fully predict. And it's in those unexplained gaps that myth, legend, and speculation have long taken root. From time immemorial, people have whispered that Earth might not be a solid sphere at all, but something stranger. Caverns vast enough to house entire cities, realms of twilight where creatures adapted to the dark might thrive, worlds beneath our own hidden and waiting. Could it be possible that beneath our feet lies not silence, but stories? There's a kind of irony here. We live on the surface as if it's the whole story, yet it's the thinnest, most fragile layer of Earth. If Earth were an apple, our existence takes place on its skin. Beneath it stretches the unknown thousands of miles deep. And in all that unexplored space, who's to say what might be hidden? This is not just a question of science, but of imagination, and perhaps even memory. Across cultures and centuries, people have spoken of underworlds, subterranean realms, and hidden kingdoms. Are these tales purely symbolic? Or could they be faint echoes of something real, remembered in myth, because it was too extraordinary to forget? Tonight, we begin a journey into one of the oldest mysteries of humankind, the possibility that beneath the crust of Earth lies more than stone and molten fire, that perhaps entire world civilizations even have lived in secret while we walked unaware above them. And as you listen, let the thought linger. The ground you stand on may not be as solid as you think. Science, as we are taught in school, offers us a tidy cross-section of the Earth, a crust of brittle rock fractured into plates that drift and grind, forming mountains and earthquakes. Beneath that, the mantle, slow convecting currents of semi-solid rock that move like thick honey over unimaginable timescales. Deeper still, the outer core, a swirling ocean of molten iron generating Earth's magnetic field. And at the very heart, the inner core, an iron sphere hotter than the surface of the sun, squeezed by pressures so immense they defy direct human experience. This is the model, the official story written in geology textbooks. A neat and rational explanation built from seismic data, laboratory simulations, and the best physics we can muster. And in fairness, much of it works. Earthquakes send shockwaves through the planet, and by measuring how those waves bend, refract, or vanish, scientists can infer what layers they passed through. It's a puzzle pieced together not from direct exploration, but from echoes like trying to sketch a cathedral from the way your footsteps sound inside. But outside the classroom, another narrative lingers. Older, stranger, harder to dismiss. For centuries, myths and speculation have whispered of hollows and caverns of vast spaces unaccounted for. These aren't just empty holes in the ground. Imagine chambers the size of entire valleys, self-contained ecosystems bathed in perpetual twilight, perhaps even civilizations that retreated from the surface long ago. To scientists, such notions sound fanciful, even reckless. After all, the deeper you go, the hotter and more hostile the conditions become. Yet history reminds us that many impossible ideas were once dismissed too quickly. Once we thought no life could exist in the crushing blackness of the deep sea, until submarines found thriving ecosystems clustered around hydrothermal vents. Once we thought meteors were myths, until a great iron stone was dragged from the fields of Mexico. So here we stand between two narratives, the official science built on equations and seismic traces, and the mythic whispers spoken in poems, prayers, and legends. One insists the earth is sealed and solid. The other hints that it is alive with hidden spaces, perhaps even hidden peoples. Which of these views is true? Perhaps both, perhaps neither. But what makes this question compelling is not just geology, it's the human hunger for mystery, the desire to believe that beneath the familiar lies the extraordinary. Long before seismographs and boreholes, humanity was already asking what lay beneath the ground. And across cultures separated by oceans and centuries, the answers came back in the form of stories, myths of underworlds that were not just tombs for the dead, but realms of power, mystery, and sometimes salvation. Take the Greeks. For them, the underworld was Hades, not a single cavern, but an entire landscape hidden beneath the crust of the earth. A place of rivers Styx, Lethe, Phlegethon, each with its own strange powers. A place where souls lingered, judged and sorted, but also where heroes sometimes ventured in search of knowledge. To the Greeks, the earth's depths were not silent. They were a mirror of the living world, populated by gods, spirits, and rulers with their own courts and laws. Far away in India, Hindu texts describe Patala, the lowest of the 7 realms beneath the earth. Far from being dark or barren, Patala is written as a place of beauty, jewel-lit palaces, radiant serpentine beings known as Nagas, and advanced knowledge of arts and sciences. It wasn't the fiery punishment of Western imagination, but an inverted paradise thriving beyond the gaze of humans above. Then there are the Hopi and Native American people of the American Southwest. Their traditions tell of the ant people beings who dwelled underground and saved humanity during times of catastrophe. When fire rained from the skies or ice smothered the land, the ant people sheltered human ancestors in vast subterranean chambers, feeding them, teaching them how to survive. These weren't monsters lurking in darkness, but benefactors' guardians hidden in stone. And these myths are not isolated. In Mesopotamia, one of the cradles of civilization, the Sumerians spoke of Kur, the great underworld beneath the mountains, a shadowy realm where gods and mortals mingled. The Mayans imagined Xibalba, the place of fear, a labyrinthine underworld filled with tests, traps, and trickster lords. In the cold north, the Norse believed in Svartalfheim, subterranean halls of dwarves and dark elves, master craftsmen who forged weapons of the gods in their fire-lit forges. What's striking is not the differences, but the similarities. Civilizations oceans apart told of worlds beneath the soil, vast, ordered, and inhabited. They spoke of glowing crystals, rivers of light beings with knowledge beyond human reach. Were these purely metaphors, ways of explaining death and rebirth, or could they be cultural memories, echoes of something once real passed down until myth and memory fused? When you place all these stories side by side, they form a chorus, whispering the same refrain: the earth is not empty. Its depths hold more than stone. Let's pause the myths for a moment and run a thought experiment. Imagine that tomorrow something catastrophic struck the Earth's surface. A nuclear winter, a meteor impact, or a climate collapse so severe that fields withered and skies turned black. Where would you go if you had to rebuild civilization from nothing? The instinct might be to flee upward into the mountains, into orbit, perhaps even to another planet. But consider the alternative. What if the smartest choice has always been to go down underground? The advantages are immediate. The surface is at the mercy of storms, droughts, ice ages, and cosmic accidents. Below the crust, conditions stabilize. Temperatures remain constant year-round, immune to heat waves or blizzards. Radiation from space cannot penetrate. Even the shock of an asteroid impact would be softened by miles of stone. There's also energy. The deeper you go, the closer you are to the Earth's vast reservoirs of heat. Geothermal energy, the same force that drives volcanoes and hot springs, offers a nearly limitless power source, clean and self-renewing. While surface dwellers struggle with fossil fuels and solar panels, an underground society could thrive on the steady heartbeat of the planet itself. Food too might not be as difficult as we think. Mushrooms and fungi flourish without sunlight, and hydroponic farming can transform caverns into fertile fields under artificial light. Water drawn from aquifers and underground rivers is abundant. Some geologists estimate there is more fresh water locked beneath the surface than in all the world's rivers and lakes combined. Protection, power, food, water, the essentials of survival all within reach. So here's the thought experiment. If we were designing a civilization not just to survive decades but millennia, wouldn't underground be the sensible choice? A place where the disasters of the surface, plagues, wars, storms, fires, become distant echoes rather than existential threats. Perhaps those myths of underworld realms are not just allegories for the afterlife, but the remembered logic of people who once sought safety beneath the ground. Perhaps they were not imagining paradise or punishment, but recalling a blueprint for survival. If underground life sounds like pure speculation, history has a way of surprising us, because scattered across the world beneath our very feet are the remains of cities that prove ancient peoples were not only capable of building underground, they mastered it. The most extraordinary example lies in Turkey beneath the region of Cappadocia. Here, volcanic rocks soft enough to carve yet strong enough to endure became the canvas for a subterranean world. The jewel of this network is Derinkuyu, an underground city plunging 18 stories into the earth. Imagine a metropolis carved entirely in stone large enough to house 20,000 people, along with their animals, food stores and churches. The architects of Derinkuyu engineered ventilation shafts to keep air circulating, wells to supply fresh water, and cleverly designed rolling stone doors that could seal entire tunnels from invaders. It was not a shelter of desperation, it was a fortress, a sanctuary, a living city beneath the ground. And Derinkuyu is not alone. The Cappadocia region contains hundreds of such subterranean complexes, many connected by tunnels stretching for miles. Some scholars believe these were used during times of invasion, but the scale suggests more than temporary refuge. These were cities built to last. Travel westward to Rome and you'll find the catacombs' vast burial networks stretching beneath the ancient city. To modern eyes they may seem grim, but they reveal a culture that thought in terms of layers surface for the living beneath for the sacred dead. These labyrinths show how natural caves could be expanded into entire hidden worlds. In China, cave cities carved into cliffsides tell a similar story. Places like the Yunnan Grottos or the Longyu Caves reveal staggering feats of engineering. The Longyu Caves in particular, dug from solid siltstone thousands of years ago, remain an enigma. Each cavern is vast, meticulously carved with parallel chisel marks, and no written record explains who built them or why. The effort required would have been monumental, yet the builders left nothing behind but the silence of stone. Even in Egypt, a land famous for pyramids above ground, secrets lie below. Beneath the Giza plateau are hidden passages and chambers, some mapped, some whispered about, suggesting that what we see above is only half of a grander design. And across the ocean, in the jungles of the Yucatan, the Mayans revered cenotes, deep sinkholes leading into subterranean water systems. To them, these were sacred portals to Xibalba, the underworld. Archaeologists diving into the cenotes have found offerings, gold, pottery, even human remains left as gifts to the hidden realms below. Taken together, these sites tell us something profound. Humanity has always looked downward, not just upward. We did not only build towers to the heavens, we carved entire worlds into the stone beneath us. And if ancient peoples could achieve such wonders with chisels and fire, what more might remain undiscovered, sealed in darkness? Standing in the caverns of Derinkuyu or the catacombs of Rome, it's tempting to see them as isolated marvels, pockets of ingenuity born from necessity. But what if they are pieces of something larger? What if the underground cities of Turkey, the cave complexes of China and the cenotes of the Mayans are not accidents of parallel invention, but fragments of a forgotten network of legends? Across the world whisper of such connections. In Mesoamerica, beneath the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan, archaeologists discovered a tunnel lined with reflective pyrite and pools of liquid mercury as though designed to mimic a glittering underworld river. In Peru, stories tell of vast subterranean passages linking Inca cities so extensive that one could travel for days beneath the mountains. Spanish chroniclers wrote of conquistadors who entered such tunnels in search of gold and never returned. In the Andes, local traditions still speak of roads beneath the earth, ancient highways used by gods and kings stretching for miles under stone. In Tibet, lamas speak of Shambhala, a hidden kingdom accessible only through secret tunnels in the Himalayas. Even in medieval Europe, peasants told tales of wanderers stumbling into underground halls of light only to emerge days later, disoriented with stories no one believed. Modern exploration has occasionally brushed against the edges of these myths. In 2018, scientists scanning beneath Mexico's Chichen Itza uncovered a sprawling system of caverns directly beneath the Great Pyramid of Kukulkan. In Peru, speleologists mapping caves found passages that seemed to extend farther than expected, as though leading into larger unmapped voids. Could it be coincidence that so many cultures describe tunnels that stretched beyond human reach? Or do these tales hint at a global lattice, a web of subterranean passageways running beneath continents forgotten by history but remembered in legend? Of course, science offers caution. Geology is messy. Rock collapses, rivers carve passages, and what seems like a grand design can often be explained by natural processes. But the persistence of these stories told in different languages on different continents across thousands of years suggests they may not be mere imagination. Perhaps our ancestors knew something we do not, that beneath the earth runs a second geography, a hidden map of passageways linking civilizations, sanctuaries, and worlds we have yet to rediscover. If myths suggest there is more beneath our feet than stone science occasionally seems to hint at the same, the Earth's interior has never been seen directly, so scientists rely on clues, ripples, and vibrations the way light tells us about stars, or the way echoes reveal the shape of a darkened room. In geology, those echoes come in the form of seismic waves. When an earthquake strikes, shockwaves ripple through the earth. Some travel quickly through solid rock, others move more slowly through molten material. By studying how these waves bend, slow, or vanish, scientists can build a model of Earth's layers. And for the most part it works. Our modern picture of mantle, outer core, and inner core comes from exactly this data. But the echoes don't always match the diagrams. Sometimes seismic waves behave in ways they shouldn't, bouncing as if striking empty chambers, or slowing as though passing through vast voids. These aren't small irregularities. In some regions, the anomalies are large enough to suggest spaces hundreds of miles across. Officially, they're explained away as variations in rock density, or zones of partially molten rock. But even geologists admit not every reading fits neatly into those categories. Then there is gravity. Gravity is predictable. It depends on the amount of mass beneath your feet. In theory, the pull of gravity should be uniform in a given region. Yet when scientists measure it precisely, they find anomalies. Places where gravity is weaker than expected, as if there is less mass beneath the surface than there should be. On the open ocean, ships sometimes experience unusual gravitational dips as if passing over hidden voids deep below the seabed. On land, researchers have recorded areas where pendulums swing oddly, or surveying equipment consistently gives skewed results. One striking example lies in the Himalayas, where gravitational readings show inconsistencies that defy simple explanation. Another is found in the South Atlantic anomaly, an area where Earth's magnetic field weakens and satellites often malfunction. Though usually explained as quirks of molten iron flows deep in the core, some researchers note that the irregularities seem more structured, more like gaps than random turbulence. Think of it this way: if Earth were a perfect sphere of rock and iron, seismic echoes and gravity should line up with elegant precision. Instead, they leave us with a puzzle, an interior map full of smudges, blurs, and contradictions. Are these signs of unknown geological processes? Or are they faint traces of something else, something hollow, hidden, or deliberately concealed? The science stops short of answering, but the anomalies remain whispering that our planet is not as solid as we once believed. If there is any place on Earth where the line between fact and fable blurs most dramatically, it is at the poles. For centuries, explorers who ventured into these frozen frontiers returned with reports that defied logic. Compasses spun wildly, refusing to point north. Sudden storms appeared out of nowhere, followed by stretches of eerie calm. Some even claimed to glimpse lands that did not appear on any map. The North Pole in particular has been a source of fascination since the age of exploration. Sailors in the 16th and 17th centuries told of waters opening unexpectedly in the ice, vast leads that seemed to invite them further inward. Their compasses, normally reliable, would quiver or whirl as if confused by some unseen force. Some navigators described holes in the sea, vast dark spaces in the ice that suggested more than frozen wasteland lay ahead. The South Pole is equally enigmatic. Early expeditions reported areas where temperatures were strangely mild, where patches of bare rock and liquid water appeared amid endless sheets of ice. To some, these were signs of geothermal activity. To others, they hinted at hidden valleys warmed by forces beneath the earth, natural oases in a world of frost. Even the maps of the past tell curious stories. The famous Piri Reis map of 1513, drawn by an Ottoman admiral, appears to show the coastline of Antarctica centuries before it was officially discovered. More strangely, it depicts that coast free of ice as if copied from charts far older than our current age of exploration. Other early maps hinted at islands or land masses near the poles that modern surveys cannot confirm. Did the cartographers imagine them, or did they preserve fragments of knowledge handed down from forgotten sources? As centuries passed, the anomalies only deepened. In the 19th and 20th centuries, polar expeditions brought back more of the same compasses that failed skies that shimmered with unusual auroras and strange mirages on the horizon. For some, these were illusions born of fatigue and frostbite. For others, they were hints of gateways openings to hidden realms beyond the reach of ordinary travel. And so the poles remain more than icy wildernesses. They are thresholds, places where human instruments falter, where the Earth's own magnetism twists and trembles, and where ancient maps and modern explorers alike whisper that the world may not be as closed as we think. If the poles are thresholds, then Antarctica is the locked door. On maps it looks empty, a white desert at the bottom of the world, but in truth it may be the most restricted and least understood land on Earth. Since 1959, the Antarctic Treaty has governed human activity there. On the surface, its intentions seem noble: preserve the continent for science, forbid military use, protect the fragile environment. And yet the result is that access is tightly controlled. No independent settlement is allowed. Travel is limited to approved research stations and tightly monitored expeditions. In an age when tourists can climb Everest or dive the Mariana Trench, Antarctica remains curiously off-limits. Why such caution over a frozen wasteland? Perhaps because beneath the ice, the continent holds secrets that challenge imagination. Modern technology has pierced the white veil and found what explorers never expected: subglacial rivers and lakes hidden for millions of years beneath miles of ice. Some are larger than the Great Lakes of North America. The most famous is Lake Vostok, a body of fresh water buried 2.5 miles beneath the surface. Isolated for eons, it may harbour life forms unknown to science creatures that evolved in complete darkness, sustained by geothermal warmth rising from below. And Lake Vostok is not alone. Dozens of other hidden lakes and river systems have been mapped in recent decades, suggesting an entire watery landscape beneath the continent. If such environments can exist beneath Antarctica, sealed away from the surface for geological ages, what else might dwell there? Adding to the mystery are the hot spots. Satellite thermal imaging has revealed regions where the ice sheet is unexpectedly thin, melted from below by geothermal activity. Some scientists argue these hot zones could hide valleys free of ice even warm enough to sustain vegetation. Others suggest they might mask geological structures unlike anything we've yet discovered. It is a landscape both alien and tantalizing: subterranean waters, geothermal warmth, and unexplored chambers locked beneath an icy shell the size of a continent. And it raises a provocative question. Is the restriction of access truly about environmental protection, or is it also about what lies hidden, waiting in the depths of Antarctica, far from public eyes? Antarctica's mysteries are not only geological, they are also historical, bound up in the stories of those few who dared to venture where the ice resists all human ambition. Among them, none is more controversial than Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the American explorer whose expeditions in the 1930s and 40s brought back reports that still echo in whispers today. Byrd claimed to have flown over stretches of Antarctica where the ice gave way to something unexpected: warm valleys, patches of land where rivers flowed freely, and vegetation grew, defying the continent's reputation as a frozen tomb. According to his accounts, these were not small anomalies but landscapes the size of entire countries, hidden oases beneath the polar veil. Mainstream historians dismiss these stories as exaggerations or misinterpretations, but the details: lush greenery, unusual wildlife, remain difficult to square with the Antarctica we know. Then there are the stranger claims. In his later accounts, Byrd described encounters with aircraft unlike any he'd seen, machines that seemed to rise from the ice itself, operating with technologies beyond the known arsenal of the 1940s. Some of his notes, heavily disputed and sometimes dismissed as fabrication, speak of flying discs and unidentified craft shadowing his flights. These rumours deepened with Operation High Jump in 1946-47, one of the largest military expeditions ever sent to Antarctica. Officially, the mission's purpose was to train personnel and test equipment in extreme conditions. In reality, it involved more than 4,000 men, a fleet of ships, aircraft, and advanced technology. Strangely, the operation, planned for 6 to 8 months, was abruptly terminated after just a few weeks. The official reason given was harsh weather and logistical difficulties. Yet in the years since speculation has flourished, that something else was encountered, something that forced a retreat. The timing is telling. The late 1940s marked the dawn of the Cold War, when secrecy and competition defined global politics. If unusual phenomena or advanced technologies were discovered in Antarctica, it would have been considered a matter of national security hidden away from public knowledge. To skeptics, these stories are simply myths layered on top of military history. But to others, they are fragments of a larger truth that Antarctica conceals more than ice and snow, that explorers like birds stumbled on things they were never meant to see, and that the secrecy surrounding these expeditions was not just about military training, but about controlling what the world was allowed to know. Let's imagine for a moment that the myths are true, that beneath our feet lies not just stone but chambers vast enough to house entire communities. How would a civilization down there survive? Without sunlight, without open skies, without the resources we take for granted on the surface? The answer is not as impossible as it first appears. First, consider light. At first glance, it seems like the greatest obstacle, but nature already offers solutions. Deep-sea creatures produce their own glow through bioluminescence, lighting up the oceans where the sun never reaches. Fireflies illuminate summer nights with nothing but chemistry. If evolution can solve this puzzle in insects and fish, might it not also inspire human ingenuity underground? Some myths even speak of glowing crystals or radiant stones illuminating subterranean halls. Whether natural phosphorescence or some unknown technology, it is not difficult to imagine underground dwellers mastering artificial light long before surface civilizations invented electricity. Then there's air circulation. A common assumption is that deep caves would quickly suffocate. But natural cave systems breathe. Temperature and pressure differences draw fresh air in and push stale air out, sometimes across miles of tunnels. Ancient engineers understood this. Cities like Rinkuyu had ventilation shafts that carried air across 18 levels. With modern knowledge, a society could design even more sophisticated systems using the very physics of the Earth to sustain breathable atmospheres. Next comes food. Here too, solutions present themselves. Mushrooms, fungi, and lichens thrive without sunlight, needing only moisture and nutrients from rock and soil. Underground rivers and pools could support fish farming. With technology, hydroponics plants grown in nutrient-rich water under artificial light could turn caverns into fertile gardens. Already today, cities like Tokyo experiment with underground farms producing vegetables beneath skyscrapers. Scale that up and a subterranean civilization could feed itself indefinitely. And what about water? Far from being scarce, it is abundant. Aquifers and underground rivers thread through the earth, containing more fresh water than all the lakes and rivers on the surface combined. In fact, many surface civilizations, like those of Mesopotamia and Egypt, depended on waters that originated underground. When you piece it all together, the picture is startling. Light from bioluminescence or radiant technology, air from natural and engineered ventilation, food from fungi, fish, and hydroponic gardens, water from underground rivers, energy from the Earth's own heat. The essentials of survival not just possible but abundant. So perhaps the greater question is, not could such a civilization exist, but why wouldn't it? If you wanted a society built to endure thousands of years, protected from war, plague, and catastrophe, wouldn't you choose to place it not on the fragile surface, but deep in the sheltering stone? If a civilization were to survive underground, it would need not just the basics of air and food, but true abundance resources, reliable enough to sustain entire generations. And astonishingly, the Earth itself seems prepared to provide. Start with water. Beneath the crust lies a hidden ocean, not in the form of vast seas, but in networks of aquifers, rivers, and reservoirs locked deep in stone. Geologists now believe there may be more fresh water beneath our feet than on the entire surface combined. Wells dug in the ancient world, whether in Mesopotamia, Egypt, or India, tapped into these invisible reservoirs. Imagine a civilization with the knowledge to harness them on a grand scale. They would never thirst even in the harshest ages of surface drought. Then there is energy. On the surface, humanity scrambles for fuel, wood, coal oil, solar panels. But below the Earth offers a heartbeat of power: geothermal energy. It is constant, clean, and nearly limitless. In Iceland today, cities are heated almost entirely by drawing on this natural furnace. A subterranean society would have no need for fossil fuels. Heat from the mantle could be captured to provide warmth, light, and electricity forever. And what of food production? With water and energy secured, farming underground becomes more than possible. Hydroponic systems could create endless fields beneath stone. Mushrooms and fungi naturally thriving in the dark would provide protein and nutrients. Some traditions even whisper of underground orchards irrigated by hidden rivers glowing softly beneath bioluminescent crystals. These practical realities echo strangely with myths. Many ancient traditions speak of fountains of eternal life hidden, springs that flowed not on the surface but beneath. The Greeks told of rivers in the underworld that could wash away memory or grant immortality. Sumerian legends describe the Apsu, the primeval waters beneath the earth from which all life sprang. In the Bible, Eden is said to be watered by a river that split into 4 great streams, some of which scholars speculate might have had subterranean origins. Even Native American tales recall hidden springs below ground where their ancestors found refuge during great cataclysms. Science and myth once again converge. Beneath us lies an invisible web of rivers, a furnace of endless fire, and the promise of abundance. Enough to sustain life not just for millennia. If you were to build a kingdom designed to last where famine and fuel shortages were nothing more than distant surface problems, wouldn't you choose to build it there where the earth itself provides its bounty? To understand how life might thrive underground, we don't need to rely only on myth. The earth has already given us previews. Natural cathedrals hidden just below the surface where conditions echo what a subterranean civilization might one day master. Take Sơn Đoan Cave in Vietnam, the largest cave passage ever discovered. So vast is this cavern that a 40-story skyscraper could fit inside it. Within its chambers, clouds form rainfalls, and an entire forest grows beneath collapsed skylights that allow shafts of sunlight to pierce the darkness. It is in essence an underground world with its own weather system, an environment that defies our sense of what should be possible below the crust. And Sơn Đoan is not unique in reminding us of Earth's hidden abundance. In Mexico's Nica mine, explorers stumbled upon caverns filled with crystals the size of trees, glowing white in the beams of headlamps. These formations grew over hundreds of thousands of years in scorching heat, nourished by mineral-rich waters. To step inside is to walk into a place that feels less like geology and more like another realm. Even in smaller caves, the evidence is extraordinary. Entire ecosystems exist in eternal darkness. Blind fish navigate by vibration and sound. Bacteria derive energy not from sunlight, but from chemical reactions oxidizing sulfur or feeding on minerals. Some of these microbes have survived in isolation for millions of years, sealed away from the surface world. They are proof that life not only endures without sunlight, it invents astonishing ways to flourish. Biologists call these places extreme environments, but perhaps the real lesson is that what seems extreme to us may simply be normal for life that has adapted to it. If tiny organisms can carve out existence in darkness, what might complex beings, intelligent beings, achieve over thousands of years? Caves like Sơn Đoan Nica and the labyrinths beneath Europe and Asia remind us that the underground is not sterile or lifeless. It is dynamic, self-sustaining, and sometimes breathtakingly beautiful. They are natural case studies, hints that the idea of underground civilizations is not just fantasy, it is an extension of what nature has already proven possible. And so we begin to see the outlines of a larger picture. The deeper we look into caves, the more they resemble entire worlds. Worlds waiting in the stone, hidden but alive. If subterranean civilizations truly exist, one question rises above all others. Why have they not revealed themselves? Why no open contact, no shared cities, no undeniable evidence of their presence? The simplest answer may be the hardest to swallow. Perhaps they do not trust us. Human history on the surface is a litany of conquest, war, and exploitation. We poison rivers, strip mountains, and harness weapons powerful enough to scorch the planet itself. From their perspective, we might seem like children wielding fire, not yet ready to handle advanced knowledge responsibly. If a hidden civilization has watched us rise and fall, would they see wisdom in stepping forward, or would they choose silence until we prove ourselves mature? Yet silence does not mean absence. Across traditions, we hear whispers of selective contact, rare moments when the surface and subterranean meet. The Hopi spoke of the ant people who sheltered them in times of catastrophe. Medieval European folklore tells of travelers who stumbled into underground halls of light, feasted with strange hosts, and emerged days later, as if from a dream. Even in the modern age, stories circulate of explorers, soldiers, or miners who vanish into caves and return with tales too bizarre to be believed. Then there are the accounts we label under another name, UFOs. For decades, unidentified craft have been reported around the world emerging, suddenly moving in ways beyond our technology, then vanishing as though swallowed by the Earth. While popular culture points to visitors from distant stars, another possibility lingers. What if some of these craft are not extraterrestrial at all, but terrestrial machines launched from hidden realms below us, designed to move seamlessly between subterranean tunnels and the open sky? Consider how this would explain the patterns. Sightings often cluster around mountains, caves or remote polar regions, exactly the places myths insist conceal gateways to the underworld. Strange lights emerge, hover, then disappear, where no landing strips exist. To the average witness, they look alien. To a subterranean people, they might simply be reconnaissance vehicles, watching the surface world as cautiously as we watch the stars. If so, then perhaps we have already been contacted, but not in ways we recognized or not on terms we controlled. And perhaps that is the point. Contact, when it happens, may not come as a grand announcement, but as a whisper, a subtle reminder that we are not alone. For now, the silence continues. But silence can also mean observation. And who knows, perhaps even now hidden watchers are studying us, weighing whether the surface is ready for the truth beneath its feet. When you step back and compare the world's underworld traditions side by side, a curious pattern begins to emerge. Separated by continents, by oceans, by languages that never touched, yet somehow the stories align. The Hopi ant. People who sheltered humanity in caverns during great catastrophes are described not as savages, but as wise, generous beings with the knowledge to sustain life in darkness. In Hindu cosmology, Patala is a subterranean realm ruled by the Nagas, serpent-like beings dwelling in jewel-lit palaces, masters of science and art. In the cold north, the Norse told of dwarves and Svartalfar, subterranean races who forged weapons for the gods, hammers that summoned thunder chains that could bind the wolf of destiny. Different names, different faces, but all speak of advanced beings who dwelled beneath the earth not as ghosts or phantoms but as civilizations. Even the details repeat. Stories from India, Mesoamerica and Europe describe caverns illuminated not by fire, but by crystals that glowed on their own, casting a perpetual twilight. The Hopi recall chambers where food was abundant, while the Mayan underworld Xibalba was filled with lords who wielded knowledge of disease and healing. The Norse dwarves were master builders, their underground halls supported by engineering no surface human could rival. How can this be? How can cultures separated by oceans with no recorded contact produce myths that echo one another so closely? One explanation is psychological, that the underworld is simply a universal metaphor born of caves, darkness, and human fear of death. Another is diffusion, that stories travelled farther and earlier than we realise passed along ancient trade routes until they spread worldwide. But there is also the third possibility, one more difficult to dismiss once you see the parallels. What if these are not coincidences, not metaphors, not borrowed tales? What if they are memories, echoes of real encounters preserved in myth because memory alone was not enough, shared imagination, or shared memory? That is the question the myths pose. And the more you compare them, the harder it becomes to ignore the possibility that humanity's oldest stories are fragments of something we once knew and somehow lost. When we speak of underground civilizations, skeptics often ask, how could ancient people possibly build such places? The answer is simple, because they already did. Take Derinkuyu once more, the great subterranean city of Cappadocia. 18 stories deep, capable of housing 20,000 souls with ventilation shafts that reach the surface like the lungs of a sleeping giant. This was not the work of desperate fugitives scratching at the earth. It was deliberate, planned, and masterful. Rolling stone doors, massive yet balanced enough for a single person to move, guarded the entrances. Wells reached deep into the rock, ensuring fresh water even under siege. It was an engineering marvel, and it was built centuries ago. And Derinkuyu is not alone. In China, the Longyu Caves remain one of archaeology's most perplexing mysteries. Carved from solid siltstone, each cavern large enough to hold a cathedral, their walls are marked with thousands of precise parallel chisel strokes, as if the builders wanted to leave behind proof of their method. Yet no records exist of who dug them, when, or why. To this day, engineers puzzle over how such massive excavations could be achieved without collapse, and why they were abandoned in silence. In Egypt, beneath the sands of Giza, explorers have long suspected hidden passageways and chambers. Some have been mapped with ground-penetrating radii, others remain sealed, their contents unknown. Were they tombs, temples, or parts of something larger, a subterranean counterpart to the pyramids above? And in Peru, Spanish chroniclers recorded whispers of tunnels beneath Cusco said to stretch for miles under the Andes. Conquistadors sought them believing they hid the treasures of the Inca, but many who entered never returned. To this day, locals warn of labyrinths beneath the mountains sealed since ancient times. What all these sites reveal is that humanity has always possessed a hidden genius for working with stone, particularly underground. And in some cases, that genius seems to surpass even our modern capabilities. Consider Roman concrete, a material that has endured for 2 millennia, while our modern concrete crumbles in decades. Or Damascus steel, a metal so strong and flexible that we still struggle to reproduce it with all our technology. Both were once known, then lost proof that entire technologies can vanish from the surface world. So if surface civilizations could build cathedrals of stone and forge weapons of unmatched strength, is it truly so impossible that others, perhaps those who chose to live beneath, possessed knowledge we have forgotten? Knowledge that allowed them to carve vast worlds into the earth itself. Perhaps the greatest secret is not that such feats were possible, but that they were not rare. Evidence of lost brilliance is all around us if only we choose to look down as well as up. Sometimes the search for what lies beneath doesn't come from myth or archaeology, it comes from accidents. Ordinary workers, miners and engineers descending into the earth for coal, gold or copper, only to stumble into something they cannot explain. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, miners in Europe, South America and Asia reported breaking through into chambers that should not have been there. Smooth walls where no tool marks could be found. Passages so geometrically precise they seemed engineered, not natural. Some accounts even describe sealed rooms containing artifacts or carvings quickly dismissed by officials or quietly covered up. Most of these reports never make it beyond local newspapers, but the pattern persists, echoes of hidden architecture buried far below. Then there are the military installations. Every major power has built them deep bunkers, missile silos, command centers buried beneath mountains. Officially, they are defensive, designed to protect against nuclear war. Yet secrecy surrounds not only their contents, but often the very locations. Facilities like Cheyenne Mountain in the United States or Yamantau in Russia are vast enough to be cities equipped with independent power, air and food supplies. And rumors persist that during excavation, builders sometimes encountered tunnels or voids that weren't on any geological survey discoveries, promptly classified, sealed and forgotten from public record. This secrecy deepened during the Cold War, when underground became the frontier of a new kind of arms race. Both the US and Soviet Union invested heavily in deep earth projects not only to hide weapons but to probe how far they could go beneath the crust. Tunnel boring machines capable of carving through solid rock like butter were developed. Vast underground laboratories studied seismic activity ostensibly for nuclear detection, but also feeding into questions about what lay beneath. If either side had uncovered evidence of pre-existing subterranean structures, it would have been considered not a curiosity, but a strategic prize. It is telling that the deeper humans dig, the more secrecy tends to surround what they find. Miners report chambers they cannot explain. Military projects expand into underground realms, then lock them away behind fences and classified files. The deeper we go, the less public the story becomes. Perhaps this is coincidence, or perhaps it is something else. After all, if there are secrets buried beneath our feet, ancient tunnels, vast caverns, or signs of other civilizations who would have both the means and the motivation to keep them hidden, if not the military powers of the modern age. If an underground civilization existed, its greatest challenge would not be building chambers of stone, but keeping them alive. Cities are not just walls and roofs, they are networks of air, sound, and movement. And in the depths of the earth, those networks would need to be reimagined. One of the most intriguing possibilities is acoustic communication. Sound behaves differently underground than it does in the open air. In tunnels and caverns, vibrations can travel astonishing distances, bouncing off rock in ways that allow subtle signals to carry far. Even simple tapping or drumming on stone could become a language across miles of passageways. Imagine a society that mastered this, where messages pulsed through the earth itself, transmitted by resonance and received by trained ears or instruments attuned to stone. Long before radio waves, an underground people might have lived in a world of echo and vibration, their communication woven into the geology around them. Then there is the question of ventilation. For a civilization below ground, air is life. Without careful planning, thousands of people in enclosed chambers would quickly suffocate. Yet natural caves already breathe. Pressure differences draw air in and push it out a rhythm as steady as a tide. The ancient city of Derinkuyu in Turkey had dozens of shafts rising to the surface, some hidden within homes or disguised among hills. Through them air flowed silently down to the deepest levels. Modern architects marvel at how efficiently it worked centuries before electricity or fans. Now imagine scaling that principle upward. A city not of a few tunnels, but of hundreds, even thousands. Great shafts rising to the surface like chimneys pulling currents of fresh air into the depths. Entire caverns designed with airflow in mind, arched ceilings to channel breezes, narrow corridors acting like bellows. To live in such a place would be to hear the faint constant sigh of the city itself breathing, inhaling and exhaling as though alive. And with careful planning this breathing could be controlled. Shafts angled to draw in cool air in summer, warm air in winter. Caverns arranged so that currents carried away smoke, heat or disease. An underground civilization might never know smog or pollution, because its very survival demanded harmony with air flow. In such a world, silence would not exist. The air itself would murmur. Stone would carry voices, and every inhabitant would live in tune with the pulse of the city, the deep, steady rhythm of a world carved not only into the earth but into life itself. When most of us imagine life underground, the first images are not inviting. We picture prisons, mines, cramped bunkers, dark, airless places where time crawls and spirits wither. It feels unnatural, even suffocating. But is that just our surface bias? Studies of underground living suggest that with design intention and community life below, might not only be possible, it could be harmonious. In the 20th century, psychologists studied miners, subway workers and astronauts training in subterranean simulators. They found that isolation and darkness can weigh heavily on the human mind, but only when conditions are harsh. When environments are designed with light airflow and social rhythm in mind, people adapt surprisingly well. In some cases, they even thrive. Underground spaces can feel secure, quiet, and insulated from the chaos of the outside world. Contrast the two images, the prison and the utopia. In one, people are foisted below ground against their will in narrow corridors lit by flickering bulbs. In the other, imagine vast caverns softly illuminated by glowing crystals or engineered light, the air fresh with flowing currents, gardens, growing in hydroponic terraces and communities gathered in spaces that echo with music and laughter. The same physical reality stone shadow enclosure can be either suffocation or sanctuary depending on how it is shaped. Consider that even on the surface, some of the most peaceful places humans build are modelled on caves. Cathedrals with their high vaults and filtered light create awe not unlike standing in a cavern. Meditation halls designed for silence and stillness echo the hush of underground chambers. Our own architecture hints that the underground does not have to be frightening. It can be spiritual, even transcendent. A subterranean civilization then would not necessarily live in gloom. It could shape its environment into something more balanced than anything above. Freed from weather, from war, from the noise of the surface life underground, could foster stability and continuity. Children born there might never see it as confinement. To them, the stone walls would not be barriers, but protection constant, enduring, as steady as the earth itself. Perhaps this is why so many myths describe the underworld not just as a place of death, but as a realm of wisdom and order. It is not always the prison we imagine. Sometimes it is the hidden harmony, the secret refuge where humanity can last not for centuries but for ages. When people imagine the hollow earth, they often picture something simplistic, a vast empty sphere with a miniature sun glowing at its core. But if there is truth to the legends and anomalies, it is likely far more intricate, not one vast hollow, but countless chambers, passageways and tunnels stitched together in patterns as complex as veins in a body. Think of it not as a single hidden world, but as a mosaic. Vast caverns the size of valleys, narrow arteries winding like roots through stone, underground rivers threading their way into chambers that could shelter entire populations, some natural, carved by the water and fire, others shaped by hands, their walls smoothed their ceilings, reinforced their paths aligned with geometric precision. The evidence we've glimpsed, the underground cities of Cappadocia, the long new caves of China, the tunnels whispered of in Peru, could be fragments of this greater whole, a parallel civilization beneath us, not a mirror of the surface, but an alternative to it. Where we built towers to scrape the sky, they built halls that reached deeper than the light of day. Where our cities rise and fall with empires, theirs could remain steady, hidden, enduring. Imagine standing in one of these vast networks. The air is cool, gently flowing from shafts that connect to other chambers miles away. The walls bear markings of tools, or perhaps symbols whose meanings are lost to us. In the distance you hear echoes, not random but rhythmic, like communication carried through stone. And as you walk, you realize the space is not isolated. Every tunnel leads somewhere, every chamber opens to another, until the pattern reveals itself, a world beneath the world. This network, if it exists, would change everything we know about human history. It would suggest that civilization has always been twofold, one above exposed to the chaos of time, and one below hidden in the quiet depths. A parallel humanity moving unseen, yet perhaps watching, recording, remembering. The hollow earth may not be a hollow sphere at all. It may be a labyrinth, a second geography as real as mountains and rivers just turned inward instead of outward. And if so, then every step we take on the surface is a step over a world we have barely begun to know. Across time, every civilization has told stories of underworld realms. To most scholars, these are dismissed as metaphors, symbols for death, rebirth, or the unknown. But what if they are something else? What if they are memories blurred by centuries of real encounters with a hidden world? The consistency is striking. The Hopi recall the ant people who sheltered their ancestors in caverns when fire and ice ravaged the surface. Hindu scriptures describe Patala, a luminous underworld where Nagas dwelled in jeweled palaces. The Norse spoke of dwarves in Svartalfheim, master craftsmen, whose underground forges produced weapons of the gods. The Mayans imagined Xibalba, a labyrinth beneath the earth, where powerful lords tested mortals. Even in Sumer, the cradle of writing, the underworld of Kur was not merely a realm of the dead, but a physical place hidden beneath the mountains. Different lands, different languages. Yet the themes echo subterranean beings of great knowledge, crystal light that glowed without fire, agriculture in darkness, and tunnels that stretched endlessly beneath the earth. The details are too precise, too repeated to be dismissed as coincidence. If they are memories, then perhaps they describe encounters, long-forgotten moments, when surface dwellers stumbled into these hidden worlds, or when underground peoples emerged during times of crisis, stories passed down orally, embroidered with mythic language until they became legend. Over time, the realities may have faded, but the outlines endured. We often assume memory fades to nothing, but in truth, memory changes shape. A grandfather's tale becomes a myth told to children. A myth becomes scripture. A scripture becomes a ritual. And beneath it all, fragments of history may survive, waiting to be recognized. So the question becomes this: are we reading poetry into the past, or are we overlooking history disguised as poetry? When cultures oceans apart describe glowing crystals, hidden cities, and wise beings underground, is that imagination, or a faint remembrance of truths too extraordinary to survive in plain form? Perhaps the world's oldest myths are not inventions, but echoes, fragments of memory whispering across millennia, urging us to look beneath our feet. The poles have always been more than icy wastelands. They are places where the earth itself seems to behave differently, where compasses falter and skies shimmer with lights that feel almost alive. And if myths are to be believed, they are also thresholds, entrances to something hidden beneath. Magnetic anomalies are the first clue. As explorers approach the poles, their compasses begin to spin or point, wildly refusing to settle. Satellites detect sudden fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field, as if something beneath the ice is interfering with the planet's natural rhythm. To mainstream science, these are quirks of molten iron churning in the outer core. But to those who listen to older stories, they are signs of gateways, places where the barrier between surface and subterranean worlds grows thin. Then there are the auroras, the northern and southern lights. We're told they are caused by solar particles colliding with Earth's magnetic field. Yet their patterns often appear strangely organized, shifting in curtains and spirals that feel almost designed. Indigenous legends hint at a deeper meaning. To the Inuit, the aurora was a pathway, a bridge between worlds. The Sami of northern Scandinavia spoke of spirits moving in the lights, warning travelers not to whistle beneath them, lest they attract attention from powers unseen. And woven through these traditions are stories of hidden entrances at the edges of the world. Inuit elders tell of warm lands beyond the ice, places where strange beings dwell. Some describe openings in the frozen earth where hunters vanished, returning with tales of tunnels and halls that did not belong to this world. The Sami too spoke of sacred mountains and valleys, said to conceal passageways into realms below, a belief so strong that some sites were treated with reverence and never disturbed. These accounts match curiously with the reports of early European explorers who swore they saw land where no land should exist or sailed through sudden stretches of open water in what should have been frozen seas. Were these mirages of ice and sky or fleeting glimpses of something more? The polar regions remain locked away, governed by treaties, guarded by military presence and shielded by natural hostility. But the stories persist. Magnetic fields that defy expectation. Lights that dance as if alive, legends of entrances into the deep earth at the planet's edges. Perhaps it is no coincidence that in every age the poles have been seen not as endings but as doorways to secrets that lie beneath the ice and to worlds our maps have never truly captured. If there is one theme that recurs whenever we approach the unknown beneath our feet, it is secrecy. Again and again we find the most intriguing regions, the deepest caves, the most remote polar valleys, the darkest trenches of the ocean, are either heavily restricted or entirely closed to ordinary exploration. At first glance the reasons seem practical. Caves can collapse, the deep ocean is crushing, Antarctica must be preserved. But when you map these restricted areas against the anomalies, strange seismic readings, magnetic disturbances, gravitational oddities, the overlap is difficult to ignore. It's as if the most mysterious places are precisely the ones we are told not to enter. Consider the great cave systems. Many of the largest networks in Asia, the Middle East and the Americas remain unexplored, not because they are inaccessible, but because permissions are limited, research is tightly controlled or local authorities discourage entry. In some cases, reports of unusual discoveries, odd carvings, unnatural tunnels vanish into silence with little follow-up. The oceans tell a similar story. The Mariana Trench, the deepest place on Earth, has been visited fewer times than the surface of the Moon. When explorers do descend, they find things that challenge biology itself, creatures that glow in total darkness, organisms that live without sunlight, even mineral formations that suggest processes we do not yet understand. If such wonders exist in the fraction we've glimpsed, what might wait in the vastness we have never touched? Then there are the military installations. Deep underground bases exist across the world, Cheyenne Mountain in the US, Yamato in Russia, and rumored complexes in China and Europe. Their full purposes are classified, their depths unknown. Whenever construction uncovers unexpected caverns or anomalous chambers, the information seldom reaches the public. Instead, it is absorbed into the machinery of national security, and Antarctica, an entire continent locked under the Antarctic Treaty, where independent exploration is nearly impossible. While scientists work there, their access is carefully limited, and large swathes remain untouched. In an age where corporations can mine the deepest oceans and climb the tallest peaks, why is this land left so carefully guarded? Perhaps all of this is coincidence, or perhaps it reveals a pattern, a deliberate effort to restrict access to the very places where the Earth's greatest mysteries might lie, areas where the surface world brushes against something deeper, something someone somewhere has decided we are not ready to see. If there are vast caverns, ancient structures, or even civilizations beneath our feet, then another question must be asked: why hide the truth? Why would governments, corporations, or institutions go to such lengths to restrict exploration and suppress discoveries? The answer may lie not in geology, but in power. First, consider social upheaval. Human history has shown again and again that great revelations can shake societies to their core. If it were proven that advanced civilizations have existed in parallel with ours, thriving in the depths while empires rose and fell above, what would that do to our sense of history? Religions might be challenged, textbooks rewritten, worldviews overturned. For those in power, such disruption could be dangerous, unraveling centuries of carefully maintained authority. Then there are the technological implications. A subterranean civilization surviving for millennia would have solved problems that still haunt us: sustainable food, clean energy, stable governance. Imagine if evidence surfaced of geothermal power systems perfected centuries ago, or advanced alloys and materials hidden in forgotten chambers. Such knowledge could render fossil fuels obsolete, disrupt entire industries, and shift global wealth overnight. Corporations that profit from scarcity would have every reason to suppress discoveries that promise abundance. The political motives are no less compelling. During the Cold War, any hint of underground networks or anomalous technologies would have been treated as potential weapons. Whoever controlled such knowledge would wield immense strategic advantage. To this day, classified projects and sealed-off sites suggest that subterranean secrets are not just about curiosity, they are about control. Even religion plays a role. Many traditions place the underworld at the heart of their cosmologies. To reveal that these realms were not symbolic but possibly real could either validate ancient scriptures or undermine them, for faiths built on metaphors turning those metaphors into history might be profoundly unsettling. And then perhaps most unsettling of all is the possibility that suppression isn't only about protecting the public from upheaval, but protecting hidden civilizations from us. If such societies exist, they would have good reason to remain concealed. Our surface record is one of exploitation gold oil forests, oceans all consumed often to exhaustion. Why would the powers below want to be revealed to those above governments, knowing this might choose secrecy, not only for their own advantage but to respect or to contain those who prefer the silence of the depths? In the end, secrecy may serve many masters: political, religious, corporate, and perhaps even the hidden societies themselves. What is certain is that the deeper we dig, the more the silence thickens, and silence in the realm of power is rarely accidental. For most of us, the ground beneath our feet is the very definition of certainty. We imagine it as solid, unyielding, a foundation that holds the weight of our lives without question. But when instruments are lowered into the earth, that certainty begins to fray. Seismic readings ripple back with signals that do not match our geological models. Sensitive gravitational instruments register void spaces of nothingness where textbooks insist there should only be dense stone. Electromagnetic sensors detect anomalies that suggest not merely random mineral deposits, but massive metallic concentrations, sometimes pulsing as if alive with currents of energy. Each discovery on its own might be explained away as a quirk of measurement, an equipment error, a natural oddity. Yet to Basishu, they form a troubling mosaic hints that our planet may not be the uniform, impenetrable sphere we imagine, but something stranger, something layered with hidden realms. Scientists have long wrestled with this dissonance, a reading here, a contradiction there, each one irritating in its resistance to tidy categorization. But human beings are storytellers as much as observers, and whenever facts slip through our grasp, imagination rushes in to fill the void. The Earth, as it turns out, has never been a mere lump of rock in our collective psyche. Since the earliest myths, people sensed that beneath the crust was not dead matter, but mystery, perhaps even intelligence. Consider the Greeks who envisioned Hades beneath their mountains, a shadowy kingdom more real than metaphor to those who lived by the flickering torchlight of caves. Or the Hindu traditions where Patala, the subterranean realms, are described not as hells, but as lush, jeweled cities inhabited by serpentine nagas brimming with light and music. Across the world, Mesoamerican stories speak of Xibalba, the underworld of the Maya, where trials awaited souls, but also where ancient powers dwelled. Even the Norse spoke of Svartalfaheimr, the realm of dwarves who shaped glowing weapons and luminous treasures deep beneath the roots of Yggdrasil. What unites these stories is not geography, but intuition. Humanity has always suspected that the world underfoot was not barren but active. And now, in the hum of seismic oddities and the quiver of magnetic needles, modern science circles back to whispers our ancestors never doubted, that there are chambers and currents below us unseen but not absent. To modern ears, talk of underground civilizations often sounds like fantasy or worse, conspiracy. But pause a moment and consider most of our world remains uncharted. We have mapped the surface of Mars with more precision than our own ocean floors. We have peered into galaxies light years away while still unable to explain certain local anomalies beneath our own basements. Less than 1% of Earth's volume has been directly explored by humans. The rest is inference, assumption, model building. We have been skating on the skin of the apple and assuming we know its core. Seismic surveys, for instance, reveal discontinuities, places where shockwaves travel differently, as if encountering hollows, domes, or materials far denser than expected. In mining operations across continents, workers have stumbled into chambers so regular in their shape, so smoothly contoured that they seem carved with intention. And there are places where compasses go wild, where gravity behaves inconsistently, where delicate equipment sputters as though repelled by forces unknown. These are not fairy tales. They are logged, recorded, though often shelved quietly away in technical reports lest they disturb the comforting symmetry of the accepted model. But anomalies demand interpretation, and interpretation demands imagination. If vast hollows exist, who or what might have made use of them? If metals resonate deep underground, do they simply sleep there in mineral silence, or have they been worked into structures, machines, networks beyond our reckoning? Pause here and recall how often humanity has been humbled by what it failed to expect. Once we assumed all life required sunlight until we discovered organisms thriving around hydrothermal vents in the blackest abysses of the ocean. Once we assumed no human could cross oceans without compasses, only to learn that Polynesian navigators charted the Pacific with memory and stars. History teaches us again and again our ignorance is vast and our certainty brittle. And so when instruments whisper of voids where rock should be, of masses that seem arranged rather than random, perhaps the humbler question is not, can this be real, but why do we still insist it cannot? Yet in fairness, skepticism is not folly. Many anomalies can and do have natural explanations, seismic misreads, mineral variations, natural caverns. But what is intriguing is not the single crack in the model, it is the chorus of them. Collectively, they press us toward the possibility that the Earth may harbour more than geology, that under the skin of continents lie vast architectures, whether natural wonders or the remnants of intelligence that render our neat diagrams incomplete. If this is so, it transforms not only science but philosophy. For what are we, if beneath the farms and cities of our daily life there hums an unseen world silent to our senses, but ancient perhaps inhabited? What is humanity if it has always been living, not on a planet alone, but on the ceiling of another world? There is an eerie beauty in this idea. The soil beneath your feet so familiar, so taken for granted might conceal cathedrals of stone corridors untouched for millennia, machines still humming like buried hearts. Our ancestors sensed it. Our instruments hint at it. And whether or not we ever prove it, the suspicion itself awakens something deep within us wonder. Perhaps that is why the idea of hidden realms has never died despite centuries of dismissal. It speaks to something primal, that feeling you had as a child when you learned that your basement was not the bottom of everything, that the earth kept going down and down into darkness that no lamp could chase away. It was thrilling and frightening, and it left you with the shiver of possibility. What if something was down there? Today we possess tools far sharper than the torches of our ancestors. Seismic sensors, gravimeters, magnetometers. Yet the questions they raise are not so different from the ones whispered around firelight in forgotten caves. They remind us that our planet is not solved, not fully known, and that perhaps it is better that way. A mystery unsolved is not a failure, it is an invitation to humility and to curiosity, because in the space between what we know and what we assume, entire worlds of possibility can hide. Worlds that might one day be mapped, or worlds that will remain by design or by destiny in shadow. And perhaps that balance between knowledge and mystery is exactly as it should be. One measurement might be nothing, a single strange hum, a distorted compass, an underground river that appears where no river should. Science has taught us to expect noise in the data, to allow for mistakes, misreadings, or the occasional quirk of geology. But when dozens, then hundreds of these anomalies begin to accumulate scattered across continents, yet echoing the same themes, dismissal becomes less comfortable. A pattern emerges, a pattern not of error but of something concealed. Concealment is, after all, one of nature's oldest games. Forest animals hide in plain sight, coral reefs disguise predators, entire species vanish into camouflage so perfect that even trained eyes miss them. If life conceals itself on the surface, why not deeper still? What if the earth itself holds secrets with equal cunning masked, behind ordinary stone and sediment revealed only in fleeting measurements that most observers will ignore? Across cultures, humanity has long intuited this possibility. The Greeks did not imagine Hades as a single cavern, but as a layered kingdom with rivers and gates and guardians arranged like an architecture of concealment. To reach its deepest halls, a soul had to pass through obstacles designed to disorient, to hide the true order of the place. In Hindu cosmology, the subterranean realms of Patala were said to gleam with gems and radiant light, but to be hidden beneath layers of illusion. The Maya described Xibalba not as a straightforward descent, but as a labyrinth of trick doors, trials, and shifting illusions, an underworld designed to conceal itself from the unworthy. These are not merely fanciful tales. They reflect an old recognition that what lies below does not give itself up easily, that the earth is a keeper of secrets, and those secrets are guarded not by chance but by design. The modern scientist might scoff at myth, yet the scientist's own data often echoes the same pattern. One anomalous reading dismissed, two set aside, but as the files fill as reports across the globe start to mirror each other, strange voids in Siberia, unexplained electromagnetic disturbances in South America, gravitational quirks into Central Europe, one is forced to confront an unsettling possibility. These anomalies may not be isolated at all. They may be fragments of a system deliberately obscured, a puzzle whose pieces refuse to align unless seen in the whole. What could conceal something so vast? Perhaps nothing more than our own assumptions. For centuries, Western science has insisted that the Earth's crust is solid, save for caverns, faults, or magma chambers. But that insistence acts as a kind of blindfold. Anything that contradicts the model is waved away. In this sense, concealment does not require trickery on the part of the Earth. It requires only our refusal to consider that the familiar model might be incomplete. And yet when taken together, the evidence whispers insistently. Imagine a map dotted with anomalies, each one an outlier on its own, but connected. They form constellations, networks, perhaps even corridors. This is not unlike how archaeologists first traced ancient trade routes by noticing that scattered finds of pottery and metal, when plotted on a map, aligned with surprising coherence. Could our planet's hidden anomalies be telling us a similar story? Not of goods exchanged above ground, but of infrastructures and presences below networks of concealment maintained for reasons beyond our knowing. Even folklore mirrors this cartography. Celtic legends speak of the she-mounds and hills that conceal entire kingdoms of the fair folk. Siberian tales describe hidden cities beneath mountains where the Chud people retreated from invaders and sealed themselves away forever. Native American traditions from the Hopi to the Mandan recount origins within the earth in chambers concealed by stone until their ancestors were called to emerge. These myths, scattered like anomalies on a cultural map, suggest a global intuition that concealment is not an accident but a law of the underworld. So why conceal in nature? Concealment protects. The burrow shields the fox, the cave preserves the seed of life through winter. But in human imagination, concealment often implies something more: guardianship. The treasure hoarded, the sacred flame kept from profane hands, the knowledge hidden until the seeker proves ready. If an underground world exists, perhaps its concealment is not only for self-preservation, but also for us, for the surface peoples who across history have shown a tendency to destroy what they do not understand, and so the anomalies remain hidden in plain sight. A seismic echo here, an electromagnetic shiver, there, each one easy to explain away when viewed in isolation. But like the tesserae of an ancient mosaic, their meaning emerges only when the fragments are placed together. To walk on solid ground is to believe in solidity, to trust that what lies beneath is stone inert and mute. Yet the patterns of concealment suggest otherwise. The earth's depths may be less a tomb than a locked chamber, its secrets concealed not by chance but by layers of misdirection, myth, and our own reluctance to see. It begins faintly, almost like imagination, a low droning vibration that seems to seep through walls, through stone, through the marrow of your bones. It is not the roar of traffic or the buzz of machinery, but something deeper, steadier, like the breath of the planet itself. People from Taos, New Mexico to Bristol, England have reported it. They describe a sound that never fully disappears, a hum that persists even when the world above is silent. Scientists have confirmed that the sound exists. Sensitive recording equipment captures the same elusive frequencies, long waves of vibration that tremble at the edge of human hearing. The hum is measurable, real and global, yet its source remains a puzzle. Some point to ocean waves colliding, others to seismic activity, others still to industrial noise that somehow travels far beyond expected distances. But each of these explanations falls short. The hum is heard in places far from industry. Its frequency patterns do not match earthquakes or tidal rhythms. It seems, in a sense, too intentional. What if this is more than geological accident? What if this is a signature, the acoustic fingerprint of something vast moving far beneath us? Imagine engines the size of mountains, turbines deeper than any mine, rotating wholly with rhythms measured not in seconds but in centuries. If an underground civilization wished to remain unseen, they might still leave behind such traces, the background thrum of their infrastructure bleeding into the surface world as a faint planetary heartbeat. The hum is not only puzzling, it is also strangely intimate. Those who hear it describe sleepless nights, their bodies vibrating with its presence. Some report headaches, dizziness, even altered states of awareness. And here too lies a mystery. The frequencies of the hum often fall within the range known to influence human consciousness. Modern neuroscience has shown that sound can entrain brainwaves, shift moods, induce calm or unease. Chanting monks, drumming shamans, Gregorian choirs, they have long used resonance to guide the human mind into altered states. Could the earth itself be doing the same? Or could someone or something beneath be using sound deliberately, a kind of communication to the surface dwellers who happen to listen? Ancient cultures might have recognized this in their own way. To the Navajo, the earth was alive, breathing beneath the land. The Maori of New Zealand spoke of subterranean gods whose voices could be heard in tremors and rumblings. In medieval Europe, chroniclers described strange droning noises from underground, sometimes heralding earthquakes, sometimes taken as omens. The Taos hum reported by locals in New Mexico fits eerily into this lineage of belief, the idea that the ground itself speaks. Perhaps this is why so many myths imagine the earth as a living body. The Greeks envisioned Gaia, the earth mother, whose sighs and groans shaped the world of men. The Norse imagined Ymir a primal being whose flesh became soil and whose bones became stone. In these visions, the planet itself is not inert but animate, its subterranean murmurs the proof of its inner life. Science too concedes that the earth is never silent. Seismic vibrations ripple endlessly, the planet humming at frequencies too low for us to hear. But the peculiar persistence and pattern of the hum recorded in modern times goes beyond background noise. Its uniformity across continents, its steady rhythm, its impact on human physiology all suggest that there may be more to it than geology alone. Imagine descending into the dark, down through rock and soil until the hum grows louder. What would you find? Caverns glowing faintly with their own light, perhaps? Vast halls where sound rolls in waves as if the walls themselves are instruments? Or perhaps something stranger, still structures tuned to resonate with the planet's natural frequencies, harnessing sound not only as communication, but as power. If such civilizations existed, their world might not be illuminated by fire or electricity, but by vibration. Their laws of physics might not rest on sight and light, but on sound. There is a reason humans have always associated caves with echoes, voices, whispers from the deep. To enter the underworld was to risk hearing what was not meant for surface ears. The hum of the earth may be the last surviving echo of that ancient fear, and that ancient hope that the darkness beneath us is not empty but filled with presences just out of reach. And so the hum continues. To most it is unheard, unfelt, slipping beneath the threshold of awareness. But to the few who catch it, it is unforgettable. A reminder that the ground we trust as silent may in fact be speaking. The question is whether we are ready to listen. Beneath mountains and valleys, beyond the rivers and lakes, we know there flows another world of water. It is vast, hidden, and often stranger than the surface rivers we name on our maps. Scientists have confirmed that aquifers and subterranean channels form networks that can rival, even surpass the Amazon in size. Yet their behavior defies expectation. Water appears in places where no surface source exists. Springs gush from solid rock as if conjured from nothing. Underground rivers change course abruptly as though redirected by invisible hands. Some run warm where geology says they should run cold. Others vanish altogether, only to reappear miles away, their flow unaccounted for by conventional hydrology. The usual explanations: fractures in rock, odd mineral formations, unusual heat pockets answer some, but not all of these anomalies. Again and again, scientists are forced to write cause unknown in their field notes. It is one thing for a stream to meander, or for rainwater to seep underground. It is another for entire waterways to seem guided, managed, as if by an intelligence at work beneath the crust. The chemistry of this hidden water is equally unsettling. Samples emerge enriched with minerals and combinations that should not occur naturally, as though mixed according to recipe rather than chance. Certain underground springs hold properties locals describe as healing or energizing reports that persist even when stripped of superstition. In Japan, pilgrims still climb to drink from sacred mountain springs said to prolong life. In Europe, medieval shrines were built beside wells whose waters glowed faintly in torchlight, rich with unusual mineral salts. Across cultures, such springs were not accidents of geology, but thresholds, gifts of unseen powers dwelling in the dark. Consider Delphi, the most famous oracle of the ancient world. Its sacred authority rested not only on its priestesses, but on the waters that welled up from beneath the temple. Pilgrims came not simply to hear prophecies, but to touch and drink from streams that carried whispers of the underworld. The Celts too held that every well was an entrance to the otherworld, its flowing water the breath of hidden realms. In Siberia, shamans performed rituals beside rivers that vanished into the earth, believing they connected to the spirits below. These myths echo the anomalies that confound modern science. If water appears where it should not, if it courses unpredictably through stone, perhaps it is because it does not follow surface rules at all. Perhaps like roads underground, waterways have been guided, diverted, or engineered. To civilizations hidden beneath the crustwater would be lifeblood. Managing it with precision controlling flow temperature chemistry would not be optional but essential. And the legends of healing waters, they too may be more than metaphor. Modern medicine acknowledges the power of mineral-rich springs in treating certain conditions. Spa towns across Europe from Bath to Baden-Baden were built on the reputation of their subterranean waters, yet the odd combinations of elements in some springs remain unaccounted for, their chemistry inconsistent with the surrounding rock. Could this be the legacy of ancient water systems tuned, purified, perhaps even infused by biological or technological processes far older than we know? The mystery deepens when one considers scale. The largest aquifer yet discovered hidden beneath the Amazon contains more water than the mighty river above it. In China, entire subterranean seas lie beneath karst formations, their surfaces stretching into darkness beyond the reach of light. In the Middle East, desert oases are fed by underground reservoirs whose origins predate recorded history. These waters are not simply accidents of geology, they are the secret circulatory system of the planet flowing in silence beneath our feet. And like blood, their movements are purposeful. Sometimes they heal, sometimes they overwhelm. When subterranean waters rise too suddenly, they erupt as floods, reshaping landscapes overnight. Myths of deluge recorded from Mesopotamia to the Andes often speak not of rain, but of waters surging from below, ancient memories of the Earth's hidden reservoirs breaking loose. If an underground civilization exists, mastery of these waters would be their first and greatest achievement. Springs could be tapped for life rivers, rerouted for travel mineral flows harnessed for energy. Imagine canals glowing faintly with bioluminescent algae, purifying and lighting the passageways at once. Imagine fountains in subterranean plazas, not mere decoration, but living conduits of a carefully tended ecosystem. To such a people, water would be not only utility, but sacrament, the element that connects stone to life, silence to song. Perhaps this is why so many cultures, when they encountered anomalous springs, responded not with indifference but with reverence. They sensed in these waters the touch of something hidden, something watching, something that understood the earth more deeply than they did. And so the underground waterways continue to flow unseen yet indispensable. Their patterns resist our models, their chemistry resists our explanations. They are not chaos but concealment, a concealed order that waits for us to recognize it. When explorers and geologists sample water from subterranean reservoirs, they often find compositions that simply don't make sense. Springs bubble up carrying minerals that should not coexist in the same solution. Some waters remain strikingly pure despite flowing through strata that should have loaded them with sediment. Others emerge saturated with rare elements in concentrations so precise they appear engineered rather than natural. One spring in Siberia releases water rich in lithium, a mineral known for its calming effects on human physiology. In Iceland, geothermal pools are infused with silica and sulfur in combinations that both soothe the skin and sterilize wounds. In the mountains of Japan, carbonated springs bubble like living wells of mineral tonic. Each has its geological explanation, but together they suggest something more, an underground chemistry that works with uncanny precision. What makes these waters uncanny is not only their content, but their consistency. A healing spring will sometimes flow with exactly the same proportions of minerals for centuries, as if governed by some hidden regulator. Yet geology is seldom so patient. Layers shift, minerals dissolve unevenly, temperatures fluctuate. To maintain a perfect balance over millennia seems less like accident than orchestration, and cultures across the world recognized this long before laboratories did. To the Greeks, such waters were sacred. The Oracle of Delphi was not just a temple, but a spring, its underground vapors believed to confer visions of the future. At Lourdes in France, pilgrims still gather to drink from waters credited with miraculous cures. In Britain, holy wells dot the countryside, many associated with saints, but older still, their reputation stretching back to pagan times. Each is bound by a belief that the earth, through its hidden chemistry, offers healing directly. Medieval chroniclers describe wells that glowed faintly at night, their waters shimmering with what we now suspect were mineral salts catching torchlight. To them, such glow was proof of sanctity. In Siberian shaman's lore, certain springs were guarded by spirits. To drink without offering was to invite misfortune. Among the Navajo bitter springs were considered messages from the earth, warnings to avoid certain places. Everywhere, water was not just water, but a voice carrying information from depths unseen. Modern science has tested some of these claims and found kernels of truth. Lithium-bearing waters can lift moods. Sulfur springs do kill bacteria. Iron-rich springs can invigorate the blood. Yet others remain unexplained reports of waters that accelerate healing, that energize the body, that leave drinkers with sensations of clarity or visions. Are these exaggerations or remnants of technologies we no longer recognize, subterranean systems designed to enhance water with properties beyond our current reach? The earth itself produces strange materials many once thought impossible. Black smokers at the bottom of the sea vent metals into mineral towers like alchemical chimneys. In caves, crystals grow the size of cathedrals, their lattices flawless and mathematically precise. Why should water be any different? Flowing in darkness, it gathers secrets, a hidden recipe of minerals, gases, even microscopic life that can alter its behavior. Some underground waters, when studied closely, teem with bacteria never seen on the surface, organisms that alter the chemistry of their environment with the precision of skilled chemists. Could these microbial communities be part of the puzzle, silent custodians of waters that appear to heal or energize? If ancient underground civilizations existed, mastery of chemistry would be as vital as mastery of engineering. To survive without sunlight, one would need to create systems where water not only sustained life, but enhanced it, carrying nutrients, medicines, perhaps even stimulants through communities cut off from the surface. Springs described as living water in myth might once have been literal conduits of designed chemistry that sustained underground peoples across centuries. This might explain why legends of healing wells are so persistent. They are not scattered oddities, but a global chorus. From Celtic holy wells to Indian rivers emerging from caves, from South American healing springs to Himalayan mineral fountains, the story is the same: water that is different, powerful, sacred. Water that seems touched by intelligence. In the end, whether by chance or by unseen design, the chemistry of the depths reminds us that the earth is not inert. It experiments, it refines, it conceals, and sometimes in the trickle of a spring or the shimmer of a mineral pool, it reveals a glimpse of its hidden laboratory waters older than history, carrying secrets still unsolved. In 1986, Romanian workers drilling for a power plant accidentally opened a chamber sealed from the surface for over 5 million years. What they found inside should have been impossible. Movil Cave, as it came to be known, contained an entire ecosystem cut off from sunlight and air, isolated since before the first humans walked the earth. Yet within its suffocating gloom swam and crawled more than 30 species found nowhere else. Blind, scorpions, pale spiders, centipedes with translucent bodies. Even stranger was how they survived. They did not depend on sunlight, plants, or the food chains familiar to us. Instead, their existence was built upon a different foundation: chemosynthesis. Bacteria deep within the cave transformed chemical compounds like hydrogen sulfide into energy, forming the base of a food web independent of the sun. This discovery rattled assumptions. For centuries, biologists had taught that the sun was the ultimate source of life. Plants captured its rays, animals fed on plants, and so on. But Movil revealed another path: life powered not by starlight but by stone chemistry and the hidden energies of the earth. It proved that ecosystems could arise and thrive in complete isolation given only the right conditions. And Movil is not unique. Similar sealed worlds have been found beneath South Africa, where bacteria live kilometers below the surface, feeding on radiation from natural uranium deposits. In the deepest caves of Mexico, strange microbial mats cling to walls thriving on sulfur. At the bottom of the ocean, near hydrothermal vents, entire communities of shrimp crabs and giant tube worms live without sunlight, nourished by the chemistry of the abyss. Everywhere scientists look the same. Lesson emerges: life is not fragile but adaptable. It can find a foothold in places we once thought barren. Ancient cultures seem to sense this resilience. The Greeks spoke of the underworld not as dead stone, but as a place teeming with spirits and creatures suited to the dark. The Egyptians imagined Duat, where strange hybrid beings thrived in caverns along the Nile's unseen course. In the Andes, legends told of chthonic serpents and underground llamas that sustained hidden peoples and secret valleys. Were these myths exaggerations or distant echoes of real encounters with life thriving? Where it should not, Movil and its kin prove that the imagination was not entirely wrong. The Earth can harbour sealed worlds of life, worlds that remain vibrant for millions of years without any contact with the surface. And if simple organisms can achieve such feats, what might more complex life have done in such isolation? Evolution, given time, does not merely adapt, it invents. It shapes forms and systems unimaginable to us, optimized for environments that defy surface logic. Some scientists speculate that if intelligent beings ever rose underground, their adaptations would follow different paths, heightened sensitivity to vibration rather than sight, bioluminescent organs for communication chemistries designed to recycle waste and energy with exquisite precision. What we see in Maviel's blind scorpions or the glowing bacteria of deep caves could be only the faintest shadows of what might be possible given millions of years of uninterrupted development. The emotional impact of Movile is profound. To step into that chamber is to step into an alien world, one that existed beside us all along, but remained sealed until a drill bit happened to pierce its wall. It is a reminder that the Earth is layered not only with rock, but with secrets vast enough to hold entire ecosystems patient as stone, thriving in silence until we stumble upon them. And perhaps this is the most unsettling lesson, that life does not need us, or the sun, or the surface. It endures in darkness, in poison, in heat and stone. It writes its own rules. And if life can do that once, it can do it again. What other sealed worlds of life might still wait beneath our feet undiscovered, unimagined, their inhabitants carrying on their ancient vigil in eternal night? Step into a deep cave and darkness becomes more than absence, it becomes presence. It is heavy, absolute a weight pressing against the eyes. But sometimes in that endless night sparks appear. Tiny organisms glow with their own chemical fire, fungi, exhaling soft green light, insects flickering like fallen stars, bacteria shining along mineral veins as though the rock itself were alive. To behold bioluminescence underground is to see the impossible life creating light without sun, without flame, without wires. Scientists call it a survival strategy. Creatures of the abyss use bioluminescence to lure prey, confuse predators, or signal one another across the void. In the oceans, anglerfish dangle glowing lures while plankton turn entire waves into liquid galaxies. In caves, fireflies and glowworms transform ceilings into constellations, guiding insects to sticky threads that gleam like starlit roads. The process is chemical luciferin reacting with oxygen controlled by enzymes like luciferase. Yet its effect is alchemical, turning darkness into wonder. Now imagine this scaled upward. Picture vast caverns where entire walls shimmer with bioluminescent moss, where paths are lit not by torches but by rivers of glowing algae. Imagine domes where stalactites drip with slow drops of light, where architecture itself is alive, illuminating breathing. For an underground civilization, this would be not fantasy but practicality, a sustainable lighting system requiring no oil, no electricity, no heat to pollute enclosed air. Light that grows, replenishes, adapts. Curiously, ancient myths often describe just such luminous worlds beneath the earth. Hindu texts speak of Patala shining with jewels and radiant serpents whose scales glowed like lanterns. Norse dwarves, masters of subterranean forges, were said to work in halls lit by radiant stones. Mesoamerican myths describe caverns filled with crystals that pulsed with inner fire. These might be interpreted as symbols, yet they mirror what bioluminescence can achieve. Darkness transformed into brilliance by natural alchemy. Even medieval travelers told of shining realms. Tales of Agartha, the Tibetan hidden kingdom, describe underground halls bathed in a mysterious light that needed no flame. Early explorers in South America heard stories of caves with glowing walls said to house gods who kept their treasures lit from within. Skeptics dismiss such accounts as exaggerations, but Movile Cave and countless bioluminescent ecosystems show us that glowing darkness is not impossible. It is natural. The emotional power of such light is undeniable. To stand in absolute blackness, then see it pierced by living radiance, is to witness creation itself. It blurs the line between biology and art, between necessity and beauty. For those who imagined underground societies, light was never a problem to solve, but a mystery to embrace. If we extend the thought further, bioluminescence could become more than lighting. It could become communication. Different hues, patterns, or pulses of glow could serve as signals, a silent language across chambers where sound fails. Colonies of glowing fungi might mark safe passages. Rivers of bioluminescent plankton might pulse in rhythms to indicate danger or celebration. Even architecture could join in, entire walls cultivated to bloom with living light tuned to specific frequencies or moods. Modern science already hints at such futures. Researchers experiment with genetically engineered plants that glow faintly, envisioning city streets lit by trees rather than lamps. Imagine that scaled into the earth, perfected by centuries of adaptation, a civilization whose very environment glows with life. The myths may not have been wrong to call such places shining realms. They may have been remembering or imagining a truth that science is only now rediscovering, that darkness need not be empty, and that life, when pressed by necessity, invents its own suns. In the stillness of a cavern, sound behaves like a living thing. A single drop of water can echo for seconds, its ripples chasing themselves down tunnels across chambers and back again in strange harmonies. To stand in such a place is to learn that silence is never silent. The earth is an instrument, and every noise is a note upon its strings. Scientists studying these spaces have found that sound travels differently underground than in open air. Certain frequencies carry farther, bouncing predictably across smooth walls, while others vanish into rock as though swallowed. Entire chambers can act as resonators, amplifying the faintest whisper into a voice that seems to come from everywhere at once. If one were to design a communication system within the depths, these natural acoustics would be a gift. A single signal struck at the right frequency might be heard for miles. Ancient peoples seem to understand this instinctively. At Chavindehuanta in Peru, archaeologists uncovered a labyrinth of underground galleries where conch shells were blown like trumpets. The architecture amplified the sound into a low vibrating roar, filling worshippers with awe, perhaps even fear. In Greece, oracles spoke from caves where voices reverberated unnaturally, lending divine weight to human prophecy. Across Europe, Paleolithic cave paintings are often found in chambers with strong echoes, as though art and sound were meant to work together. These are not accidents. They suggest that early cultures recognized the power of sound in stone and used it to create experiences that blurred the line between natural and supernatural. If surface peoples could do this with ritual, imagine what a subterranean civilization might achieve with science. Communication underground would not rely on wires or satellites. It could be as simple and as complex as sound. Vast networks of tunnels might be tuned like flutes, their chambers positioned to carry signals across incredible distances. By striking stone or channeling air currents, messages could travel sensed and unseen, reaching allies miles away without leaving any trace on the surface. But sound could serve more than communication. It could shape consciousness itself. We know that low-frequency vibrations affect the human body, inducing calm, unease, even altered states of awareness. Monks chant in resonant halls not merely for beauty, but because the harmonics reshape their breathing and heartbeats. Drums in shamanic rituals drive listeners into trance. Underground, where sound lingers and multiplies, this effect would be magnified. Entire communities could synchronize their minds and bodies through shared resonance. What we call myth often hints at this. The Hopi of the American Southwest tell of kivas, underground chambers where ceremonies use song and drum to open pathways to the ancestors. The Tibetan tradition of chanting in caves, voices reverberating against stone, is said to wake the mountain. Even medieval legends of bells tolling beneath the earth, ringing from sunken churches, might be echoes of a deeper intuition that sound is the true language of the subterranean world. Now imagine halls where walls themselves vibrate, tuned to resonate with chosen frequencies. Imagine communities coordinating across continents, not with electricity, but with sound waves guided by the bones of the earth. To us, such a system seems alien. To an underground people, it would be natural, a way of turning silence into speech, darkness into music, isolation into connection. Sound, after all, is vibration, and vibration is energy. To master sound underground would not only be to communicate, but to harness one of the simplest, most universal forces of nature. The hum we hear above the echoes below the chants of ancestors, all may be fragments of the same truth, that the earth is alive with resonance, waiting for someone to listen closely enough to understand. If water is the blood of the earth, then heat is its breath. Just a few kilometers beneath the surface, temperatures climb steadily, a constant reminder that our planet is alive with fire. This geothermal energy is everywhere, waiting silent reservoirs of power hotter than any furnace, older than any hearth. For most of human history, it has lurked beyond our reach, surfacing only in hot springs, steam vents, and volcanoes. But to a civilization living within the crust itself, such heat would not be distant. It would be the very foundation of survival. The modern world has only begun to touch this potential. In Iceland, turbines hum beside boiling pools generating electricity directly from the Earth's warmth. In Japan, hot baths steam in volcanic valleys, drawing pilgrims not only for comfort but for the belief that such waters heal the body and cleanse the soul. Across continents, geothermal plants now power cities with energy that requires no coal, no oil, only the patient fire that has burned since the planet's birth. But our use is crude compared to what might be possible. Imagine a people who learn to channel this heat, not with steel drills, but with the patient shaping of stone. They would not need endless fuel to light their halls. The very walls could breathe warmth into their homes, stable and enduring. Air currents could be guided by heat differentials carrying fresh ventilation through chambers without smoke or ash. Water could be coaxed through thermal siphons boiling in one cavern and condensing in another, creating natural engines that run without rest. To us, this sounds like advanced engineering. Yet in essence, it is simple working with the physics of temperature and flow. Even ancient peoples glimpsed this. The Romans built elaborate bathhouses over thermal springs harnessing heat not only for luxury but for hygiene, a public resource of health and ritual. In Japan and China, hot springs became shrines, places where Earth's inner fire was revered as sacred. The Maori of New Zealand tell stories of volcanic valleys as gifts from the gods, places where warmth from beneath could cook food, heat homes and connect the living to the spiritual realm. Volcanoes too were not only feared but worshipped. The Greeks imagined Hephaestus, the smith of the gods, working his forge beneath Mount Etna. The Polynesians told of Pele, goddess of fire-shaping islands, from her molten breath. In every culture, fire from below was not simply destruction, it was creation, a force of power to be tapped, respected and feared. Now transpose this reverence into practicality. For a subterranean society, geothermal mastery would not be legend, but necessity. Endless night requires endless warmth. Energy for light, for food, for building, all of it could flow from the simple fact that heat rises and falls in predictable ways. By guiding those flows, by constructing chambers to collect or disperse warmth, entire cities could thrive in stability beyond anything we know on the surface. Consider this: while surface civilizations were felled by drought, famine and fuel shortages, an underground people with geothermal mastery could endure uninterrupted. Their lights would never dim their warmth, never falter. While empires rose and fell above beneath the ground, a quiet, patient fire might have sustained a lineage without end. Perhaps this is why myths often speak of hidden forges, luminous halls where dwarves or gods crafted weapons and wonders in eternal fire. Perhaps they were not imagining the impossible, but remembering faintly what might be real, that the earth's fire can be not only threat but ally, and that those who learn to master it live with a constancy the surface can only envy. Every so often, in the deep tunnels of a mine, or the exploratory shafts of modern drilling workers, stumble upon something that should not exist. Chambers too smooth, their walls arched with a symmetry that resembles architecture more than accident. Passages that run straight as a blade through layers of stone joining at right angles like corridors rather than cracks. In some cases, miners report tool marks, grooves that bite uniformly into rock cuts, cleaner and more precise than any known ancient chisel could manage. These findings are usually dismissed in official reports as unusual geological formations chalked up to erosion, mineral dissolution, or tectonic stress. And sometimes, of course, they are. Nature has her own artistry, and stone can mimic the work of hands. Yet the consistency of accounts from across the world is harder to ignore. Siberian miners tell of hexagonal chambers polished like glass. South African gold diggers describe intersecting tunnels where no mine was ever planned. In Nevada, drill cores have struck voids shaped like halls, the stone around them marked by patterns resembling human craft. What do we make of these? If they were isolated tales, we might laugh them off. But stories of hidden builders echo through culture as well. The Celts spoke of the Firbolg and the Tuatha-De Danann peoples who once lived above, then retreated into the mounds, leaving behind works that men could never reproduce. In the Andes, myths describe the Chulpas, ancient unknown builders who carved stone with powers later peoples lacked. In Central Asia, legends persist of the Chud tribes who dug underground cities so perfect that when they vanished, the tunnels remained intact for centuries. Even the Hebrew Bible preserves a whisper, the Rephaim, the giants who raised megalithic works before vanishing into shadow. Everywhere the same refrain: there were others before us, skilled hands that shaped the world and left only fragments behind. Geology is skeptical of such interpretations, and rightly so. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But what if the evidence is already there, hidden in plain sight, dismissed not because it is unconvincing, but because it is inconvenient? Tool marks too irregular for the timeline chambers, too precise for erosion voids, too orderly for tectonics. Each one easy to ignore. Together they suggest a story that long before us others may have known these depths and left their trace. Archaeology occasionally reinforces this suspicion. In Turkey, the underground city of Derinkuyu sprawls for miles, carved into volcanic rock with ventilation shafts and stables, chapels and wells. Its sheer scale suggests planning and engineering we rarely credit to ancient peoples. Yet Derinkuyu is only the beginning. Across Cappadocia, hundreds of such cities dot the lands, their origins murky, their purpose debated. If we know of such works in accessible stone, how many more lie hidden deeper, where miners or explorers have only caught glimpses? Perhaps these marks of earlier hands are the faint survivors of a deeper legacy, a tradition of subterranean building that stretches back further than recorded history, now preserved only in anomalies and myths. The miners who stumble into such places describe unease, as though entering rooms not meant for them, spaces still holding the memory of their makers. And maybe they are right. For if civilizations beneath us once thrived, their hands may still echo in stone straight lines where curves should be polished, walls where chaos should reign and grooves carved, not by accident but by intent. The earth does not easily give up its secrets, but it remembers. And in rare moments it shows us enough to suggest that we are not the first to walk these corridors in the dark. Among the strangest discoveries made deep within the earth are objects of metal embedded in stone. In mines from Russia to South Africa, workers have reported spheres of alloy resting in seams of rock supposedly millions of years old. In other places, drilling cores have pulled up fragments of metal shaped too regularly to be dismissed as random. Some of these show grooved surfaces, balanced symmetry or alloys that do not occur in nature. Official explanations are cautious. Most are described as natural concretions, odd crystallizations of mineral deposits that coincidentally take metallic form. Others are dismissed as contamination, scrap metal accidentally mixed into samples. But the sheer persistence of these reports across time and geography leaves a lingering question. Why do metallic anomalies appear so often where none should exist? If genuine, their implications are staggering. They suggest either that human or human-like activity occurred in geological eras, far older than recorded history, or that underground forces have produced metals in ways beyond our current understanding. Either conclusion unsettles the clean lines of our scientific narrative. What is striking is how myths anticipated this puzzle. Many cultures tell of metals as gifts from beneath. The Greeks credited Hephaestus, smith of the gods, with forging weapons and ornaments in volcanic forges below Mount Etna. The Norse dwarves shaped luminous treasures in their halls beneath the mountains, their mastery of metallurgy inseparable from their subterranean homes. In Mesopotamia, stories of the Apkallu semi-divine sages include the teaching of metalwork and knowledge, said to come from the depths rather than from the heavens. Even biblical tradition casts metallurgy as ambiguous, almost forbidden. The Book of Enoch describes fallen angels teaching humans the secrets of metal, particularly weapons knowledge that brought both power and destruction. Across traditions, metal is never neutral. It is sacred, dangerous, transformative. It is not something humans simply found, but something bestowed often from below. Archaeology has its own mysteries. In Peru, Inca gold work displays purity and skill that still astonishes metallurgists. In India, the famous Iron Pillar of Delhi resists corrosion after 600 years, its metallurgy not fully replicated until modern times. These achievements are credited rightly to human ingenuity, yet when placed beside the anomalous finds buried deep in stone, they raise a provocative thought: could advanced techniques have originated not on the surface but in hidden traditions preserved or rediscovered through fragments of contact with underground knowledge? Modern mining operations occasionally complicate the story further. Reports of drill bits striking metallic walls deep underground or retrieving alloys unaccounted for by geology circulate quietly in technical papers. These accounts rarely make headlines, for they cannot be reconciled with established timelines. Yet they echo older legends too closely to be dismissed outright. If underground civilizations exist, or once existed, metals would have been among their most valuable tools. Durable, malleable, conductive metals are the bones of technology. And underground people might have discovered ways to refine them with heat and pressure from geothermal flows, producing alloys unique to subterranean conditions. For us, stumbling upon these would be like finding a single gear from a forgotten machine puzzling incomplete but undeniable in its suggestion of design. The puzzle of the metals, then, is not only geological, it is symbolic. For metals, wherever they appear, mark thresholds of power. They are how humans left the Stone Age. They are how societies forged empires. They are perhaps the clearest clue that something deeper than chance once shaped the earth around us. And so when miners pull a sphere of alloy from rock, or when a corroded tool is found in strata older than civilization itself, we should pause before dismissing. Perhaps it is coincidence. Or perhaps it is a trace faint, incomplete but real of hands that worked before us, shaping not myth, but matter, leaving behind puzzles cast in iron, bronze and gold. There are places where compasses fail. Hikers report needles spinning in wild circles, instruments useless as though the earth itself is confused about north and south. In caverns, explorers sometimes describe sudden flickers of light, bluish glows that dance for an instant and vanish without cause. In deep mines, radio signals warp and distort voices, stretching into static or repeating themselves like echoes of electricity. These phenomena have been recorded across continents, each time blamed on unusual minerals, magnetic ores, or equipment error. Yet they recur with such consistency that another explanation whispers beneath the surface. The Earth itself is alive with currents we do not understand. Electromagnetism is no small thing. It governs everything from the pull of compasses to the beating of hearts. Our nervous system fires with electrical pulses. Our atmosphere shields us with magnetic fields. When these forces warp in caves and tunnels, they do more than confuse devices, they unsettle minds. Some explorers report headaches, nausea, or the feeling of being watched. In folklore, such places were called haunted, cursed, or scared. Science calls them anomalies, but perhaps both are true. Folklore preserves many echoes of these effects. In the marshes of Europe, travellers feared the will-o'-the-wisp ghostly lights that lured wanderers to their doom. In Siberia, glowing spheres were said to roll silently over tundra hills before vanishing into the ground. In North America, mysterious spook lights have been reported for centuries, flickering on lonely trails, or above valleys always elusive, always tied to land where caves or mineral seams lie hidden. To those who lived before electricity, such lights were supernatural. To us, they are puzzles. But what if they are more than accidents of geology? What if they are signatures, traces of technologies operating far below? An underground civilization could easily harness electromagnetism for communication, navigation, even concealment. Field effects might ripple upward, disturbing our compasses, warping our radios, igniting gases into ghostly flames. What looks like haunting may be nothing more than infrastructure brushing against the surface world. Consider how advanced such control might be. Today, scientists experiment with wireless power transmission, sending energy through resonance rather than wires. Tesla dreamed of a world lit by the Earth's own electromagnetic field. Underground societies might already have achieved this using chambers of stone as resonators, shaping fields that move power silently across vast distances. The flicker of a will-o'-the-wisp could be nothing more than excess energy bleeding off, visible to human eyes as a spark in the night. Even more conversely are the reports of interference with human perception. Low-frequency electromagnetic fields are known to influence mood, heighten anxiety, even induce visions. Caves with strong anomalies often inspire stories of spirits, voices, or presences in the dark. Could it be that these places are not haunted but humming with frequencies tuned to the human brain? A subterranean culture understanding these principles might use them as subtle tools to calm communities, to transmit information, even to deter outsiders who wander too close. The idea is unsettling. We imagine our minds private, our senses our own. But deep in the earth, in places where compasses spin and lights dance unbidden, that certainty dissolves. We are reminded that electromagnetism binds not only machines, but biology, that our thoughts too are electrical currents vulnerable to the fields around us. So the next time a needle whirls in confusion or a strange light hovers at the edge of vision, consider, is it merely stone and mineral, or is it the faint touch of hidden technologies, a reminder that the Earth is not summit, but charged, an electric planet whose deeper systems may belong not only to geology, but to minds we have yet to meet. If this evening is helping you drift into calm, leave a like and subscribe, but only if it rises naturally from you. I'd love to know in what part of the world are you now, and what time glimmers on your clock. It is often from above, not below, that the first clues appear. Satellites scanning remote landscapes pick up shapes invisible at ground level, long straight signs etched into desert floors, circular depressions too perfect to be random symmetrical formations where geology should be messy. At first glance, they resemble natural striations or dried riverbeds, yet some reveal mathematical precision angles, ratios and alignments that whisper of intent. Official surveys usually label them as geological anomalies or remnants of past human activity, but complications arise when the patterns are in places no known culture ever settled. Some lie deep in polar regions, others beneath rainforest canopies, others in deserts with no evidence of ancient habitation. A few even appear to change over time, growing or shifting as if responding to forces beneath. Ground-penetrating radar has only deepened the mystery. In certain locations, symmetrical patterns on the surface correspond with structures underground, chambers, corridors and voids that suggest architecture on a scale larger than pyramids. Yet many of these sites remain closed to deeper investigation, either because of political restrictions, environmental protections, or unexplained obstacles. The phenomenon recalls the most famous of surface mysteries, the Nazca Lines of Peru. From the ground, they are meaningless scratches. From above, they form vast figures of birds, animals, and geometric forms. The people who created them left no written record of why. Some scholars see ritual pathways, others astronomical calendars, but one undeniable fact remains: the Nazca designs only make sense from the sky. That perspective, once thought impossible for the ancients, suggests either a cultural obsession with unseen watchers or knowledge inherited from sources not fully understood. Elsewhere, similar enigmas occur. The giant Uffington white horse carved into the chalk hills of England, visible only from high vantage. The massive geometric geoglyphs of Kazakhstan, detected only by aerial photography. Across the globe, vast patterns etched into the landscape suggest that humans have long been marking the Earth in ways that look outward or downward toward hidden observers. What if some of these patterns are not meant for the sky at all, but for the underworld? A civilization beneath the surface might create surface geometries as markers of subterranean networks, like tags above a buried infrastructure. From above, they appear as puzzles. From below, they might serve as coordinates, ventilation points, or resonant structures aligned to deeper halls. This would explain why some formations seem inexplicable as art, but logical as engineering vast grids in the desert that mirror nothing on the surface but correspond to mapped aquifers, circles of stone aligned over underground voids, repeating lines across tundra that match seismic anomalies below. They are not messages to us, but maintenance marks for worlds beneath our feet. The secrecy surrounding some sites is itself a mystery. Why do expeditions stall, funding vanish, or permissions evaporate when certain anomalies are investigated? Why do technical reports sometimes end abruptly, concluding only that further study is not advised? Perhaps it is simple bureaucracy, or perhaps, as some suspect, the patterns mark thresholds, entrances or nodes to systems that others would prefer remain concealed. Whatever their purpose, the patterns seen from the sky remind us that the Earth's story is layered. From the ground, we see only fragments. From above, larger truths appear as though someone long ago or far below composed them for an audience with wings or satellites. The question that lingers is simple but profound. Are these the fingerprints of nature's geometry, or the blueprints of hands that shape the Earth from within? Not all mysteries of the underworld come from stone and metal. Some are written into flesh and bone, encoded in the double helix of humanity itself. Geneticists tracing the migrations of our species occasionally stumble upon patterns that defy neat explanation. Certain populations carry markers that suggest long isolation lineages, branching off from the main currents of human history, adapting to conditions that surface life alone cannot explain. In these groups, unusual traits appear: enhanced night vision, exceptional hearing, larger lung capacity for oxygen efficiency, stronger bone density. Traits that taken individually could be the product of chance, but together resemble the very adaptations one might expect for life underground. One example comes from Central Asia, where remote mountain communities display eyesight unusually sensitive in low light passed down across generations. In the Andes, some groups carry lung capacity rivaling that of free divers, an advantage underground as much as at altitude. In parts of Eastern Europe, folklore long spoke of the moon-eyed people, pale tribes with luminous eyes, who vanished into caverns when displaced by conquest. Genetic surveys in these regions reveal pockets of DNA variation that hint at long periods of isolation, as though certain communities spent centuries apart from the world. Anthropologists tend to explain such anomalies through environment adaptations, to altitude, to diet, to isolation in forests or mountains. and often they are correct. But still, the question lingers, why do these adaptations align so neatly with what an underground life might demand? Stronger bones to withstand confined pressure, sharper hearing to compensate for diminished sight, a metabolism tuned to scarcity and endurance. The echoes of folklore complicate the picture. The Cherokee speak of a pale, light-sensitive people who lived in caves before being driven away. In Ireland, tales of the Sidhe describe beings who dwelt beneath hills fair-skinned and ageless. In Siberia, stories of the Chud tell of tribes who retreated into the earth, their descendants never seen again. In each case, myth blurs with memory. As though these accounts preserve more than imagination, they preserve the ghost of ancestry. What if the genetic record is not incomplete but misinterpreted? What if those odd markers, those inexplicable adaptations, are not simply quirks of surface isolation, but the remnants of lineages shaped in environments beyond the reach of the sun? If so, then the underground world is not merely a possibility. It is already written in us, hidden in our blood like faint fingerprints from hands that shaped our species alongside the surface tribes. Even our language remembers. Words like chthonic from the Greek thonios, meaning of the earth, once referred not only to the dead, but to God's ancestors and beings dwelling below. The Romans spoke of the manes combined subterranean spirits tied to family lines. Across cultures, ancestry is often imagined as descending, not only in time, but literally into the ground. Our dead return to the earth, and perhaps so too did some of the living, leaving behind branches of humanity we have not fully traced. Modern science, with its sequencing machines and genomic surveys, may yet uncover more. Already, discoveries like the Denisovans, an entire human lineage found from a fragment of bone in a Siberian cave, remind us how much remains unseen. A few genetic markers can overturn centuries of assumptions. Who can say what else lies hidden in the caves or within us waiting for recognition? The story of the underground is not just about chambers and machines. It is about people. And if the genetic hints are true, then the underworld is not wholly alien. It is part of our own story, part of us sealed away like a memory in the marrow of our bones. Long before instruments detected anomalies beneath our feet, long before miners stumbled into strange chambers, or scientists mapped invisible rivers, people told stories. They spoke of doors in hills, stairways in caverns, shining halls deep below the roots of mountains. These were not merely ghost tales or superstitions to frighten children. They were traditions repeated with solemnity, preserved as fragments of knowledge. Among the Hopi of the American Southwest oral history speaks of emergence from the underground. According to their teachings, humanity passed through successive worlds, each destroyed by imbalance, until the people were led upward through a sipapu, a small hole connecting the lower realms to the surface. To this day, sipapu shrines in Hopi Kiva's circular underground ceremonial chambers mark the memory of that passage. The implication is not just that ancestors lived below, but that life there was organized, guided, sustained, until the time came to emerge. Tibetan traditions tell of Agartha or Shambhala, hidden kingdoms said to flourish beneath the mountains. These were not realms of the dead, but thriving societies radiant with wisdom, possessing knowledge of energy and healing unknown to surface dwellers. Pilgrims spoke of secret lamas guiding them to entrances hidden in valleys, caves, where the air itself shimmered with light. The stories became entwined with Buddhism, but their roots are older, belonging to a deeper conviction that the greatest wisdom lies not above, but below. Celtic lore brims with the Sidhe, the people of the mounds. Far from fairies in the modern sense, they were described as powerful, ageless beings inhabiting vast underground palaces beneath hills. Their homes were filled with music feasts and treasures glowing with their own radiance. Many stories speak of mortals invited inside returning years later to find centuries had passed, a reminder that time itself flows differently in hidden realms. For the Celts, the underworld was not hell, but another form of existence parallel and concealed, close enough to touch yet forever out of reach. Across the globe, similar stories abound. The Maya imagined Xibalba, an underworld reached through caves and rivers filled with trials and tricksters, but also rulers with profound powers. In Central Asia, tales describe the Chud people, ancient tribes who fled underground to escape invasion, sealing their doors behind them. Siberian shamans tell of ancestors who lived beneath the earth, still guiding ceremonies through whispers in stone. Even in medieval Europe, legends of subterranean beings persisted. The hidden folk of Scandinavia, the dwarves of Germanic lore, the gnomes of alchemical texts. Always beneath, always secret, always knowledgeable. Skeptics argue these myths are metaphors for death, for memory, for the unconscious mind. And often they are. But why do they converge so strongly across cultures separated by oceans and centuries? Why does humanity again and again imagine not empty caverns but inhabited worlds? Myths are not blueprints, but they are not random either. They are the shapes left by truths too slippery for direct expression, truths carried in story when other languages fail. What is striking is how many of these traditions contain practical details. The Hopi describe not just the existence of underground worlds, but the systems by which they lived agriculture nourished by artificial light air flowing through carefully placed vents. Celtic tales mention architecture with precise geometry, great halls supported by pillars. Tibetan texts describe radiant technologies, sources of energy that needed no fire. These are not the inventions of children's fables, they are technical hints reframed as symbols. Perhaps, as some suggest, these stories are memories distorted, embroidered, but memories nonetheless of real encounters with subterranean peoples or remnants of knowledge passed down from times when surface and underground were less separate. If so, myth becomes less a fantasy and more a coded record away from fragile human memory to preserve truths too strange for history books. And so the stories endure. They are told at firesides or rapports written in sagas carved into stone. They whisper of shining realms and hidden peoples of knowledge too great to vanish completely. In them, the underworld is not a void but a library, not a grave but a hidden archive of wisdom, waiting for those who still know how to listen. History as we are taught moves in a line. Stone tools give way to bronze, to iron to steel. Knowledge climbs in neat steps, every rung carefully built on the last. Yet scattered across the world are objects that do not fit this tidy staircase. They are too old, too complex, or simply too strange. And again they are found in the ground, sometimes deep within rock layers that should have been untouched for millions of years. Take, for example, the so-called London hammer, discovered in Texas in the 1930s. Embedded in ancient rock, the hammer appears to be part of a concretion more than 100 million years old. Its head is pure iron, unusually resistant to rust. Mainstream science argues that the concretion formed around a modern hammer that somehow slipped into a crack, but for others it is a whisper of something older technology preserved, misplaced, or deliberately hidden. In Siberia, tiny coils made of tungsten and molybdenum were found in river sediments some less than a millimeter wide. Geological dating suggested an age of over 100,000 years. They looked like manufactured parts, spring screws, fragments of some precision device. Scientists who examined them argued they were industrial debris washed downstream in modern times. But locals call them the Ural spirals and wonder if they are remnants of ancient machines that once worked beneath the earth long before modern industry. Legends align with such mysteries. The Hopi speak of tools brought from underground to till the earth. In Norse sagas, dwarves were the master smiths crafting weapons and treasures of impossible quality. In South America, the Inca told of Viracocha, who emerged from caves bringing knowledge of stone cutting and agriculture. In each case, technology is not invented, it arrives carried from hidden places. Consider also the Baghdad battery ceramic jars with copper and iron fittings discovered in Iraq, dated to over 2 millennia ago. When filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar, they produce a small electric charge. Was this coincidence, or did someone in antiquity harness the principles of electricity? If so, for what purpose? To plate metals or to heal, to illuminate underground spaces? Theories abound, but certainty remains elusive. Then there are the maps. In 1513, the Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis drew a world map that included parts of Antarctica, free of ice, a view of the continent as it might have looked thousands of years earlier. Where did this knowledge come from? The map's own annotations claim it was copied from ancient sources. Could these have been records from civilizations that explored not just the seas, but also subterranean passages linking continents? Other anomalies are less famous but equally haunting. Metal spheres with grooves found in South African mines dated to billions of years old. A wall of perfectly fitted stone blocks unearthed in Oklahoma buried beneath layers of coal. Carvings in Mexican caves showing beings with luminous orbs. Each discovery is dismissed as misinterpretation, contamination, or hoax. Yet taken together, they form a chorus of doubt against the neat march of conventional history. Skeptics argue that humans have a long record of cleverness, that outlasses don't prove lost civilizations only, that ingenuity arises everywhere. And perhaps that is true, but one pattern is difficult to ignore. So many of these out-of-place artifacts are connected to themes of light, energy, metallurgy, or precision technologies ideally suited for life underground. If there were once societies that flourished below the surface, their traces would not survive like ordinary ruins. Stone temples crumble, wooden houses rot, but metallic tools, maps and sealed devices might endure surfacing only by accident in mines, riverbeds or cracked stones. What we now call anomalies may be fragments of a deeper archive, hints that the earth itself still holds evidence of earlier hands that shaped, built and then withdrew. Perhaps what unnerves us most is not that these artifacts exist, but that they suggest memory. They whisper of a continuity of knowledge, one that ebbs and resurfaces, hidden and revealed like rivers beneath rock. And if memory is preserved in objects we cannot explain, then maybe the stories of hidden peoples, luminous cities and sealed worlds of wisdom are not fables at all, but echoes of a reality just beyond our reach. For as long as humans have wondered about the ground beneath them, one idea has lingered. What if the earth itself is not solid but hollow? To modern science it sounds absurd. Yet for centuries thinkers, explorers and mystics entertained the possibility that entire worlds might exist inside our own. The first seeds of the hollow earth theory were sown in the 17th century. In 1692, astronomer Edmund Halley, best remembered for the comet that bears his name, published a bold hypothesis. Disturbed by strange fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field, Halley suggested the planet might be composed of multiple concentric shells, each separated by an atmosphere, each possibly bearing its own magnetic poles. He even speculated that luminous gases between the shells might account for the aurora borealis. To Halley, the Earth was not merely a ball of rock, but a layered nest of habitable worlds. The idea did not fade. In the early 1800s, an eccentric American army officer named John Cleves Sims Jr. declared to the world that the Earth was hollow and open at the poles. He envisioned vast openings at the Arctic and Antarctic leading into an interior lit by a central sun. Sims travelled, lectured, and even lobbied Congress to fund an expedition to the polar openings. His followers, the Simicites, believed that entire civilizations might flourish inside, shielded from the harsh surface climate. The fascination with a hollow world seeped into culture. Jules Verne's Journey to the Centre of the Earth imagined prehistoric beasts and lost worlds beneath Europe. In the 20th century, pulp magazines filled with stories of subterranean kingdoms, reptilian races and hidden cities where advanced science thrived. These tales blurred the line between fantasy and possibility, embedding the hollow earth into popular imagination. And yet the theory never stood on myth alone. Explorers returned from the polar regions with stories of mirages, lands where none should exist, warm currents flowing from ice-choked seas, and animals migrating in puzzling ways. To believers, these were signs of hidden entrances. Even in the 20th century, rumours swirled about secret expeditions. Admiral Richard Byrd, after his Arctic and Antarctic flights, was rumoured to have spoken of lands beyond the pole descriptions seized upon by hollow earth enthusiasts as coded confirmation. Modern geology has debunked the idea of a truly hollow planet. Seismic waves generated by earthquakes pass through Earth and reveal its layered structure, crust mantle, outer core, inner core. No vast cavities exist on the scale imagined by Sims or Verne. But the story doesn't end there. Because while the Earth is not hollow, it is riddled with chambers, voids and labyrinths, caves stretching hundreds of miles, magma chambers beneath volcanoes, aquifers as large as seas. In places, these underground realms could indeed seem like entire worlds unto themselves. And so the hollow earth persists not as science, but as symbol. It embodies the human sense that what lies below is not simply rock, but mystery. It allows myths of hidden peoples, advanced technologies, and forgotten wisdom to find a home. In the hollow earth, science and folklore merge not because the earth is empty, but because our imagination fills the darkness with stories. From Halley's elegant diagrams to Verne's roaring prose, from the icy pole to the desert cave, the hollow earth theory is less about geology and more about longing. A longing for hidden continents, untouched civilizations and truths waiting in the dark. The planet beneath us may not be hollow, but in the minds of dreamers it is vast enough to hold endless worlds. If the surface of the earth has been home to empires that rose and fell, what of the worlds below? Legends across continents whisper of cities buried in darkness, metropolises swallowed by disaster, hidden for protection, or carved deliberately into the bones of the planet. The most famous of these whispers echo from Plato. In his dialogues, he described Atlantis, a mighty island kingdom, punished for its hubris, drowned beneath the sea. Though Atlantis was said to vanish into ocean depths, later generations blended its story with that of subterranean realms. If an entire city could be lost to water, could not others be buried under stone? In Cappadocia, Turkey, the ground itself answers that question. Beneath the soft volcanic rock lies Derinkuyu, an underground city sprawling across multiple levels capable of sheltering tens of thousands. Its halls once held market stables, churches and wells, all carved invisibly beneath the surface. Historians believe it was a refuge, a place where communities could vanish underground to survive invasions. For centuries, Derinkuyu lay hidden, mistaken for a network of basements until rediscovery in the 60s revealed a city entire. Other tales are harder to pin down. In Tibet, myths speak of Shambhala, a hidden city of enlightenment nestled within mountains, or beneath them a place where advanced wisdom waits for a time of need. In India, the epics describe subterranean realms, the Nagas, serpent-like beings said to live in jeweled palaces under the earth, reachable through secret tunnels. In South America, whispers tell of tunnels under the Andes, leading to chambers filled with golden artifacts of pre-Incan peoples sealed away from conquerors. Archaeology occasionally stirs the imagination with physical traits. In Ecuador, explorers reported vast stone-lined tunnels that seemed too regular to be natural. In Central America, pyramids are often discovered layered atop older buried structures, suggesting entire cities may lie beneath the jungle canopy and earth. And in Egypt, rumours persist of hidden corridors and sealed chambers beneath the paws of the Sphinx, places that some believe hold records of civilizations predating the pharaohs themselves. In the modern age, even our machines have stumbled upon mysteries. Satellite imaging has revealed geometric patterns beneath deserts and forests, outlines of cities lost beneath shifting soil. In Honduras, LiDAR scans uncovered a sprawling urban complex in dense jungle, the so-called White City, long dismissed as a myth until it rose again through lasers. What might lie still deeper beyond the reach of scanners remains unknown. Lost cities beneath are more than architecture. They are metaphors of memory. Civilizations bury their dead, but sometimes they bury their living, their knowledge, their pride. Myths of subterranean metropolises are stories of survival that when catastrophe strikes, not all is destroyed. Some part of humanity finds refuge in stone, and when these stories surface, whether in a Turkish town or a Tibetan legend, they stir something ancient in us. The knowledge that the earth is not simply soil and rock, but an archive. That beneath the roots of our forests and the pavements of our streets there may be whole histories still waiting patient in the dark. For as long as humans have sought shelter, caves have been more than mere refuges. They are the first sanctuaries, natural cathedrals shaped by water and time, where stone walls became canvases and darkness became sacred. To step inside is to cross a threshold, leaving the world of daylight for a place that feels older, closer to the pulse of the earth. The oldest evidence comes in ochre and charcoal. In the caves of Lascaux and Chauvet in France or Altamira in Spain, walls bloom with animals, bison, horses, lions, painted tens of thousands of years ago. These are not decorations for idle eyes. The flicker of firelight animates them, turning still figures into living herds. Some archaeologists believe the caves themselves were stages for ritual, a space where art, sound and shadow wove together to call upon spirits or recount cosmic stories. In other parts of the world, the sacred function of caves persisted. In Greece, oracles whispered prophecies from deep grottos where the acoustics of stone lent voices an unearthly resonance. In the Andes, caves were seen as Pacarina's wombs of the earth, places where ancestors emerged into the world. In Mesoamerica, the Maya believed caves were entrances to Xibalba, the underworld, where offerings of pottery, jade, and even human sacrifice were left in stalactite chambers dripping with mineral rain. Caves are not empty. They drip echo and gleam. Their acoustics are extraordinary. A single voice can sound like a chorus, a drum like thunder. At Chavin de Huantar in Peru, ancient priests carved ritual tunnels designed to carry sound so that the roar of conch shells reverberated like the growl of jaguars. In India, the Ajanta and Ellora caves became entire complexes of Buddhist and Hindu sanctuaries carved by human hands, but shaped to feel eternal, as though the rock itself was a vessel of divinity. The darkness plays its role too. Without light, the senses sharpen, time dissolves. In that void, fire becomes more than a tool, it is revelation. Flame transforms rock walls into shimmering visions, turning cave chambers into living myths. The faithful who entered were not just worshippers, they were participants in a performance between human and earth. Even today, caves hold this aura. Tourists who descend into great caverns often fall silent, struck by the sheer immensity, the way stone can feel like architecture built for gods rather than men. The pillars of stalactites and stalagmites resemble columns. The vaulted ceilings mimic cathedrals. Nature anticipated our grandest buildings. Caves as cathedrals remind us that religion did not always rise from towers reaching skyward. Sometimes it descended inward. To find the sacred, humanity did not always look to the heavens. It looked into the earth, into the chambers of shadow where breath echoes and time itself feels suspended. In these subterranean sanctuaries, one truth lingers. We are not only children of the sky, but also of the stone womb below where the first prayers were spoken in whispers to the dark. The ancients approached caves with reverence and fear, but today a different breed of pilgrim ventures below the scientist, the caver, the speleologist. Where once there were torches and whispered prayers, now there are carbide lamps, climbing harnesses, and laser scanners. Yet the awe remains. Every descent is still a negotiation with darkness, a slow unraveling of the Earth's oldest secrets. Modern speleology. The scientific study of caves begins with the climb down. Rope descents into shafts hundreds of meters deep require a cool head and steady breath. In Slovenia's Vrtoglavica, cave explorers rappel into a vertical drop longer than the Eiffel Tower is tall. In Mexico, the Cave of Swallows swallows skydivers whole. Wingsuit pilots leap from its mouth into the abyss. The first step in studying the underworld is learning how to survive the descent. Once inside, instruments replace myths. Geologists map strata to read the history of oceans and tectonic shifts. Hydrologists trace underground rivers following dye trails through limestone mazes to learn how aquifers breathe. Biologists carry sterile vials ready to collect strange microbes or blind cave fish creatures that have adapted to a life where sunlight never comes. Technology extends human reach. Laser scanning creates digital models of caverns revealing chambers as vast as city blocks. Remote-operated vehicles swim through flooded tunnels where no diver can risk going. Drones designed for GPS-denied spaces hover in tight black passages, mapping in 3 dimensions what human eyes cannot see. But the science of descent is not purely mechanical, it is also psychological. Scientists note the way time slips underground. With no sun, circadian rhythms falter. Days stretch into dreamlike continuums. In long expeditions, cavers keep meticulous logs of meals and rest, but their bodies lose track, drifting between waking and timelessness. The underworld unsettles not only geology but the mind. The discoveries are profound. In the Lechugilla cave of New Mexico, explorers uncovered bizarre microbes feeding on sulfur and iron, entirely cut off from the surface for millions of years. In Romania's Movil cave, an entire ecosystem thrives in poisonous air, its food chain fueled not by sunlight but by chemosynthesis, bacteria transforming chemical energy into life. These sealed laboratories of nature hint at how life might endure on other planets beneath Martian crusts or the icy shell of Europa. Every descent is a reminder of how little we know. Only a fraction of Earth's caves have been mapped, and many remain hidden, sealed, or unreachable. The science of descent is young, still fumbling at the edge of a vast, unseen continent beneath our feet. And so each expedition begins with the same gesture, a lamp lit at the mouth of darkness. To go down is to seek not treasure but knowledge, knowledge that reshapes how we see the earth above. At the edge of a cave mouth, something always lingers, a silence, a shiver, a sense that this opening is more than rock. Across cultures, humans marked thresholds into the earth, not as neutral spaces, but as dangerous borders, places where the everyday world frays into mystery. Myths grew like moss around these openings, each one a warning, a guardrail and sometimes a guide. In Greece, poets told of Hades' gates hidden in caverns. Near Cape Tainaron in the Peloponnese, a sea cave was feared as the entrance to the underworld, where Orpheus dared to tread to retrieve Eurydice. Shepherds avoided it at dusk, convinced the souls of the dead slipped through when shadows grew long. The Norse spoke of Svartalfheimr, the realm of the dark elves, entered through cracks in stone and guarded by beings who forged weapons in the gloom. Dwarves and trolls lurked in the folds of Scandinavian rock figures, at once monstrous and skilled, tempting mortals with gold but binding them with curses. To stumble into their halls was to risk never seeing daylight again. In Central America, the Maya named such threshold Xibalba the place of fear. Caves in the Yucatan still adorned with offerings were considered mouths of the underworld. Travelers carved glyphs at their entrances, petitions to appease the lords who ruled below. Even today, offerings of corn incense and rum are left at cave mouths by Maya descendants, a ritual dialogue with the deep. In Celtic lands, the otherworld was never far from a hill or a hollow. Shadi mounds, green hills believed to house fairy folk, were treated with reverence. No one built upon them. To cut into such a mound was to invite vengeance. Folktales tell of farmers cursed with failing crops or families beset with unearthly music that drove them mad. The mound, like the cave, demanded respect, a threshold watched by unseen guardians. And in Siberia, where winter and stone hold dominion, shamans spoke of spirit portals in sinkholes and fissures. To enter was to risk not just physical danger, but spiritual dismemberment. Only the initiated, marked with ritual scars and chants, could walk those paths and return with knowledge. What unites these myths is their duality. The threshold is always perilous, but it is also always sacred. To cross it is to trespass, but also to learn. The guardians, whether hounds of Hades, trolls of the north, or Maya lords of Xibalba, stand not only as threats, but as keepers of wisdom. Perhaps these stories did more than frighten. They encoded real dangers, the foul air of sealed caves, the disorienting dark, the sudden floods. To wrap those truths in myth was to preserve them, to make the threshold memorable. A tale of a cursed farmer may be easier to recall than a lecture on carbon dioxide buildup in limestone caverns. And so the myths endure warnings, with teeth still whispered at cave mouths today. They remind us that a threshold is never merely stone, it is a boundary guarded and one steps across at one's own peril. Step beneath the ground and you enter, not just a physical void, but a symbolic one. Darkness strips away distraction. The senses sharpen. In silence, the human mind often finds the divine. For millennia, cultures across the world sought the underworld not only as a place of fear, but also as a holy chamber, a cathedral built by the earth itself. In Rome, the Christian catacombs stretch for hundreds of kilometers beneath the city. Dug in secret during centuries of persecution, they became both cemeteries and chapels. Faint oil lamps once flickered against frescoes of shepherds, fish and vines. The walls held not just bones, but hope prayers carved into plaster hymns sung softly, where imperial ears could not hear. To step into those corridors was to enter a hidden church, the earth itself offering shelter. Far older still are the painted caves of Paleolithic Europe. At Lascaux, Chauvet and Altamira torchlight once revealed herds of bison, lions and horses galloping across rock walls. The chambers echo with purpose beyond decoration. Archaeologists believe these caves were sanctuaries of ritual places where hunters communed with the spirits of the animals they pursued. To paint in such darkness required faith that the unseen world could be called into being with pigment and breath. In India, the Ajanta and Ellora caves were carved into mountain rock between the 2nd century BCE and the 10th century CE. These labyrinths of stone became vast monasteries and temples adorned with carvings of Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and Hindu deities. Monks lived, prayed, and chanted within their stone halls where the acoustics turned even a single voice into a choir. Here, faith was literally embedded in the earth, each pillar a prayer solidified in stone. In Cappadocia, Turkey, soft volcanic rock was hollowed into entire cities, Derinkuyu and Kaymakli, sprawling underground settlements where Christians fled from persecution and war. Their chapels remain painted with ochre-red crosses and angels' testimony that belief survived even when driven below the surface. But subterranean faith was not always about concealment. In Mesoamerica, caves were revered as primordial wombs of creation. The Aztec called them Chiquimoztoc, the place of 7 caves where humanity first emerged. Ritual offerings of jade, obsidian, and blood were left at these thresholds. To kneel in such a chamber was to return symbolically to the place of origin to ask the Earth Mother for renewal. Even in modern times, miners have carved chapels into salt and coal. In Poland, the Wieliczka salt mine hosts chapels glimmering with crystalline altars. In Colombia, Zipaquirás salt cathedral echoes with Catholic masses held hundreds of meters underground. These sanctuaries remind us that faith adapts following humanity even into the depths of industry. Why underground? Perhaps because faith thrives in liminal spaces, the places between worlds. Beneath the surface, one is neither in the realm of the living sky, nor in the silence of death, but in a borderland, a place where prayer feels closer, where the divine might be listening in the hush. The earth's depths have been cloisters, cathedrals, wombs, and tombs, and as long as humans walk above ground, they will still descend in search of that otherworldly silence where faith and stone intertwine. Beneath our feet lie not just caves and tombs, but monuments of engineering so sophisticated that even today they provoke awe and questions. The earth remembers these builders in the lines of its stone, in staircases worn by vanished feet, in chambers carved with precision no crude tool should have achieved. Consider Derinkuyu in Cappadocia, Turkey, an underground city plunging 11 stories deep, capable of sheltering tens of thousands of people. Ventilation shafts pierce down through the rock fresh air, circulating as if the builders had mastered airflow centuries before modern mechanics. Wells provided water-rolling stone doors, sealed passages and tunnels connected to neighboring cities. Who drew the plans? What knowledge of geology, of air, of water pressure did they possess to carve such a refuge without collapse? Then there are the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, a vast labyrinth of halls, altars and passages hewn from limestone around 4000 BCE. In its oracle chamber, a single spoken word resonates with a low frequency that travels through the stone, vibrating the bones of those who stand within. Was it designed for ritual acoustics, a deliberate manipulation of sound to induce altered states of consciousness? Modern architects cannot say for certain. At Ellora in India, the Kailasa temple stands not above but within the earth. Carved in the 8th century CE, it was cut directly from a single mountain of rock removed from top to bottom, as if the mountain itself were peeled open to reveal a sanctuary inside. Over 200,000 tons of stone were removed, yet the structure rises with delicate colonnades, towers and sculptures. It is both temple and testament, human vision made solid through impossible patience. And what of Cusco and Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where narrow underground passages twist beneath the surface, their walls of massive stones cut and fitted so precisely that no blade of grass fits between them? These megalithic works attributed to the Inca hint at engineering skills that rival even modern stone cutting. Such feats echo into mystery. Did ancient engineers possess methods long since forgotten? Rope and chisels alone seem meagre explanations for such monumental designs. Were these projects expressions of survival fortresses against enemies, vaults for storing food and relics, or were they something more symbolic? Perhaps they were meant as messages to the future, proof that their makers had touched some deeper knowledge of stone weight and sound. Across the world, underground works reveal a universal human impulse to carve permanence into the impermanent, to use the earth itself as both medium and message. And every time we rediscover these chambers, we hear an echo not just of stone struck by chisel, but of minds reaching across millennia saying we were here, and we knew more than you think. The ancient echoes of stonecutters and priests lead us to today's explorers, men and women who descend into the earth not with chisels or myths, but with ropes, sensors and cameras. They do not seek to build underground, but to understand it, to map what remains hidden. And yet their stories sound no less like legends. Take the cavers of Kubera Cave in the Caucasus. Called the Everest of caves, it plunges more than 2,000 meters beneath the surface, the deepest known cave on Earth. To reach its farthest chamber, explorers must crawl through ice-cold tunnels, dive through flooded siphons and carry supplies for weeks at a time. The deeper they go, the more the air thins, until explorers breathe with bottled oxygen as if scaling a mountain, but inverted inside the Earth itself. Or the divers of Cenote Angelita in Mexico, who descend through fresh water until they encounter what looks like a river flowing beneath them, a dense layer of hydrogen sulfide gas separating the waters like a false horizon. Below that toxic river lies a realm of eerie stillness, where only the most daring divers tread. The scene resembles something not of this earth, a ghostly forest submerged, its trees preserved in the sulphurous gloom. Technology has expanded the frontier. Robots equipped with sonar map underwater tunnels unreachable by humans. Laser scanners sweep caverns with precise light, creating 3D models of spaces once navigated by instinct alone. In Slovenia and China, teams use drones adapted for confined spaces, flying through chambers where a misstep for a human could mean entrapment. Scientists too push deeper. In South Africa's Beatrix gold mine, researchers drilled down almost 3 kilometers not for gold but for microbes living in the hot, brine-filled fractures of the rock. They found organisms surviving without sunlight, nourished only by chemical reactions with minerals. The implications ripple outward. If life thrives here in darkness, perhaps it could thrive beneath Mars or Europa, yet exploration is never free of risk. Cave divers speak of the third rule: 1/3 of your air to go in, 1/3 to get out, 1/3 as insurance. And still some never return. The underground frontier is as unforgiving as outer space, and just as alluring. What drives them? The answer is the same impulse that once pushed people to carve temples underground, the hunger to know, to touch the unknown. To explore beneath the skin of the earth is to face the limits of human endurance, but also to glimpse the profound truth that our planet holds worlds within worlds. In the glow of headlamps, in the steady hiss of scuba tanks, in the silence after a hammer strike, the frontier continues to expand. The maps we draw of caves and tunnels are not just lines on paper, they are invitations, sketches of doors still waiting to open. What lies beneath has always been a mirror for what lies ahead. The underground, once feared as a grave, then revered as a sanctuary, now emerges as a possible refuge for the future. In the coming centuries, humanity may turn more and more to the deep earth, not simply for curiosity, but for survival. Climate change, overpopulation, and the vulnerability of life on the surface may drive us downward. Already architects imagine subterranean cities cooled by geothermal gradients, powered by underground rivers, lit by bioengineered luminescence. Entire districts could one day be carved beneath deserts where surface temperatures soar too high for comfort. Military planners and governments think differently. For them, the earth below is the ultimate shield. During the Cold War, vast nuclear bunkers were constructed beneath mountains and stocked with food and fuel to outlast apocalypse. In Switzerland, every citizen is still legally guaranteed a place in a fallout shelter, a national architecture of survival. What was once paranoia may one day be necessity. But there are gentler visions too. Imagine libraries etched into salt caverns, safe from fire and flood, holding the collective memory of humankind for millennia. Imagine underground farms stacked like layers of green tapestry, drawing water from aquifers and feeding populations without exhausting the soil above. Imagine research stations drilling into the crust to test the edges of physics, studying the Earth's deep magnetic heart. And always there will be myths. Just as our ancestors spoke of shining realms below, we may tell stories of genetic laboratories glowing in crystal-lit chambers, or of cities of silence where people have traded the open sky for security under stone. To future generations, such places may sound as distant and strange as Shangri-La, or the hollow earth to us. Yet the underground also teaches humility. For all our drills and scanners, it remains vast, unmapped, and resistant. Caves collapse, floodwaters rise, toxic gases remind us that the Earth's belly is not ours to claim without cost. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the underground is not that it hides treasures, but that it reminds us we are guests, delicate creatures walking atop a living planet whose depths we scarcely know. As we look toward the deep future, the underground remains a frontier of survival, of imagination, of memory. Beneath our feet there is darkness, but also promise. The Earth has always carried us. One day it may also keep us. And so when we think of the worlds below, we are not just thinking of caves, mines, or myth. We are thinking of ourselves, of the lengths we will go to endure, of the places we choose to dream, and of the hidden chambers where human history will echo long after we are gone. Beneath our feet stretches a realm we have only begun to know. For thousands of years, people imagined it as the dwelling of gods, the prison of the dead, the cradle of hidden cities. Scientists now probe it with sensors and drills, uncovering ecosystems sealed in darkness, metals twisted by impossible pressures, and waters that flow where no river should be. And yet for all we have mapped, measured, and mined, the underground remains less charted than the surface of Mars. It is not only a place, it is a mirror. It reflects back the fears we bury, the hopes we carve into story, and the future we may one day shape when the surface no longer feels safe. To walk through its chambers is to feel time bend. Fossils whisper of life that vanished millions of years ago. Stone tools and paintings remind us of ancestors who entered the dark with fire in hand and awe in their eyes. Today, explorers, scientists, and dreamers still descend, guided by the same mix of wonder and dread. Perhaps that is the underground's lasting gift, not riches, not refuge, but perspective. It shows us how small we are against the weight of stone, how fleeting against the scale of geologic time, and yet how stubbornly we keep searching. The world below remains unfinished in our minds, a frontier of myth and measurement alike. And as long as there are questions still unanswered, voices will echo through its halls, ours among them. So what are we left with after myths and maps, anomalies and whispers? The picture is incomplete but tantalizing. Whether in the glowing halls of Patala, the crystal-lit caverns of the Hopi Ant people, or the vast labyrinths of Cappadocia, the message is the same: the earth is not solid substance. It is layered with stories and perhaps with lives hidden just beneath our feet. If even a fraction of it is true, if subterranean civilizations have existed or still exist, it would mean that humanity has always had two paths. One on the surface subject to storms, plagues and wars, another in the depths shielded from disaster, built on continuity, patience and survival. A parallel history unfolding beneath our own. And if such societies endure, imagine what they might have achieved. Freed from the endless cycle of collapse and conquest that defines surface history, they might have solved the very problems we struggle with now. Energy that does not poison the air, food that does not exhaust the soil, cities that breathe in harmony with the earth rather than against it. A culture measured not in decades of dominance but in millennia of stability. This thought is more than mystery, it is hope. It suggests that the chaos of our world is not inevitable, that humanity is capable of balance, of ingenuity, of creating something that lasts. The proof may not be in our textbooks, but it may exist nonetheless, sealed in stone. And even if no hidden civilization waits beneath us, the possibility itself is a gift. It urges us to look deeper, to imagine better, to build societies that endure rather than consume. The earth still holds secrets, and in those secrets we find inspiration. The next time you feel the ground beneath your feet, remember this. It may not be as solid as it seems. Beneath you may lie caverns as vast as valleys, rivers that have never touched the sun, perhaps even the echoes of voices long forgotten. And whether those echoes are myth or memory, they remind us that our planet is not exhausted. It is alive with mystery and with the promise that there is always more to discover, both in the world below and in ourselves. Thank you for sharing this quiet moment with me. Subscribe so the next stories can find their way to you as well.